Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 26, 2025. This is the meeting of the Gloucester School Committee. The public is welcome to attend meetings in person or alternatively through the Zoom link provided on the agenda. The meeting notice will reflect that the meeting is Zoom only. As the recent amendments to open meeting law allow, the school committee may continue to hold meetings publicly. Please note that the in-person meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the remote connection. I'll call this meeting to order and state that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful and be lifelong learners. And I ask that you join me in this. Start with introductions since we have the table.
Gary Frisch, CFO.
Amy Cam, Director of Mental Health and Social Emotional Learning for the district. Amy Pasquale, Assistant Superintendent.
And Mr. Superintendent.
Dr. Michael Jarvis, Director of Special Education Services.
Jeremy McKean, School Committee.
Laura Leeson, School Committee.
Melissa Prince, School Committee. Kathy Clancy, School Committee.
Bill Melvin, School Committee.
Keith Minio, School Committee.
Greg Berger, Mayor.
Lexi Thomas, President of the Class 2025.
Stephanie DeLisi, Recording Software.
We are going to take the Gloucester Student Advisory Council out of order. It's a busy time for seniors and particularly if they're in the play and everything else. But Lexi Thomas is with us tonight. Thank you for being here. We'd love to hear your report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lexi Thomas. I'm the President of the Class 2025. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Gloucester High School Executive Board to give an update on many happenings here at Gloucester High School.
That's just, sorry. I'll say.
Start again. So we
Hello, everyone. My name is Lexi Thomas. I'm the President of the Class 2025. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Gloucester High School Executive Board to give an update on the many happenings here at Gloucester High School. The Interact Club will be hosting the 16th annual Pizza Taste Off at the Cruiseport Wednesday, April 9th from 5 to 7 p.m. Tickets are $10 and all proceeds go to the American Cancer Society. Please see or email Christine Simmons at GHS with ticket information and questions. The Class 2028 is selling Easter egg grams during lunches for students to gift their friends and teachers. The Class 2027 is having a jalapenos night on March 31st. Takeout and dine-in are included. Tomorrow evening, the Gloucester High School Music Program is hosting a coffee house fundraiser for the Gloucester family affected by the fire. The performance will be held at the Elks from 4 to 7 p.m. Prom season is officially upon us. Tickets were sold the last couple of weeks, and we have over 200 attendees this year. Today also marks 31 school days for seniors. Senior yard signs to commemorate the graduating class are also on sale. Students and parents can reach out to Monica Madruga or Megan Baldessano with questions and information. The junior event will be held at the Ipswich Country Club this year on May 2nd. Tickets are on sale until Friday. The blood drive was a big success last week. Thank you to all staff and students who donated. Congratulations to the 52 members inducted into the Sherman B. Ruth chapter of the National Honor Society. And thank you to the Gillnetter and the Gloucester Daily Times for the coverage. April 14th marks the softball team's jalapenos night, 4 p.m. to close. Dine-in and takeout are included. And finally, James the Giant Peach is just around the corner from our very own drama club. April 10th to April 12th, tickets are officially on sale at gloucesterhighschool.blogspot.com or on the QR code outside of the auditorium. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Definitely busy time. Anybody have any questions? Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Okay. The next item of business is oral communications. If there's anyone online that would like to speak, now is your opportunity, and I will state the public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be reviewed in proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each and submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. Anybody speaking, please give your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samantha Blanchard. I live at 7 Railroad Ave in Rockport, and I'm a teacher here at the Gloucester Preschool. I read a letter to you all that expresses what losing 3 paraprofessionals will affect the Gloucester Preschool. I've emailed this to you prior to the meeting because there was a lot to say, but I'd like to take some time to briefly highlight some of the things that I wrote to you all. This will directly affect how I'm able to teach my students. I teach my class based on 3 staff members, and currently, and going down to 2 will make me unable to teach the curriculum in the same way that I do now, and I'll have to cut things out. I will need to call for support and hope that somebody is available to come whenever I have a behavioral or safety situation occurring in my classroom. Currently, I'm able to handle that myself 90% of the time, but I will not be able to do that if I only have 1 staff member left in the classroom while I'm doing this. We will need to relook at the bus pickup and drop off, which will make it much more difficult in an already difficult traffic pattern in our parking lot, because I will no longer have someone that's available to bring my students to a separate door while I'm at the opposite end of the building entering the students in. I will no longer be available to attend IEP meetings or do evaluations on students during the time that my students are in session. At the preschool, all teachers are dually rolled. We do both the job of special ed teacher and a regular ed teacher. So my job is to do these evaluations and attend these meetings, but I will not be able to leave my paraprofessional alone with 15 students while I'm there for an hour plus. Anytime a student has to use the bathroom, go to the nurse, go to their hooks in the hallway, or do anything outside of my classroom, I will not be able to do anything with any other student that may need me, because they can't go anywhere alone. Going to the nurse, going to the bathroom, these can take a good amount of time with a preschooler. Toilet training students will become substantially more difficult because that takes a lot of time and more frequently out of the classroom. We will no longer be able to cover for each other when someone is out and there's no substitutes to come. And lastly, one thing I find extremely important is we'll have to wait even longer to be able to move kids from program classes to fully integration, knowing that fully integration has less support and won't be able to give these students what they need to make in the transition to the least restrictive environment. These are just a few bulleted points that I chose to highlight for you all tonight. But like I said in the beginning, you've all received an email from me explaining it in more detail, and I'd love to hear from you and your thoughts on that email. Thank you for giving me this time and this opportunity to talk.
Thank you. Okay, we have Barbara Betts and Representative Ann Margaret Ferrante online. I don't see her.
She's in
there.
there.
Yeah, okay. And so without objection, I would like to take the item, our agenda item out of order. Respect for your time, your willingness to be with us tonight to think about state budget. I'm sure you'll share. So yeah, so we're gonna take this now, pause oral communication. Yep. And we'll get back.
Are you asking me to sit back down?
You can. Because it may be a bit silly.
Bruce talks a lot. I don't know if you know that.
We like to hear it though.
Nice to see you too.
Nice. I love the video. You know that.
We can't get the monitor camera on Senator Tarr, so maybe he could borrow someone's laptop. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Stephanie, is there a way to?
You don't need to, don't unmute. You should mute.
Yeah, you just leave it on.
There we go. There's a comment.
Okay.
Do you want to pin Ann Margaret maybe? Yes, Ann Margaret.
Hey, Mark, can you?
And maybe.
No, you
she's
want to
saying
pin her so that she's on the screen.
Right, she's on the screen.
The bridge back.
Oh,
I can see me, but I don't know where I am on the screen with your hand.
Front and center. Oops, yes, when you talk. Yeah.
If we were playing Hollywood Squares, you'd be bottom row, center.
Depends on which screen it is.
Which is great.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna try and make
Good?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
great.
Now we're good.
You're all set. Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Representative Ferrante. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. So we've invited our state representatives to join us. It's been quite a while, actually. But we're glad to have you here. I know once we have to actually budget time. And as you know, there are many challenges financially and So we wanted to hear from you folks what's happening on Beacon Hill in the budget process. I think we wanted to touch on special education experience and challenges, both in terms of logistics, circuit breaker funding, inflation on out of district tuition payments. Anything else you would like to talk about? Okay.
All right, I noticed that Melissa's getting plenty of note paper ready there, so I hope that she's ready to write a lot.
What you say is very important.
Good recovery. Well done. I hope everyone watching took a note of that.
And Margaret too.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting us to have a conversation with you. We really appreciate that opportunity. And in particular, Madam Chair, I want to thank you and Superintendent Lummis for the invitation. We talked about the importance of this, and it's great to be able to have this conversation. And I always want to take a moment whenever we're in a setting like this also to say thank you for the work that you do. It's very difficult to make sure that things operate well and that our kids get a good education with limited resources and many challenges that we face. And while there may not be a lot of glory in this for all of you, the fact is you're doing incredibly important work. And I want you to know that Ann Margaret and I both very much appreciate the time that you spend and the individual commitment that you make to make things work. And that's deeply appreciated. And we appreciate our partnership with you. I mean, we are in regular contact with all of you and in varying levels. We do talk with Mayor Berger at least once a month, and we talk with the rest of you at varying times, and we welcome that conversation on an ongoing basis. And we also try to provide you with information. We send memos out quite frequently to let you know what's happening with developments so that you can be informed. So we want to maintain that level of communication. Where we're at right now is we're in the sort of the middle of the development of the state budget for the coming fiscal year that will begin on July 1st. Right now, the governor has offered her proposal for that budget for the fiscal year 2026 budget. And the House will debate the budget in April and the Senate will debate it in May. And as part of that process, the Ways and Means Committees have been holding joint hearings, the House Ways and Means Committee, the Senate Ways and Means Committee around the state. And thanks to the leadership of Representative Ferrante, one of those hearings actually occurred at Gloucester City Hall, which is great for folks to be able to come and see the process at work. So those hearings are ongoing, and I'm sure she'll fill us in on what the schedule is and when the last one is. But as they conclude, the House budget writers will begin to put together their proposal for consideration of the members. And we're actually in the Senate right now putting together ours as well. Doesn't quite go according to the textbook that says the governor hands it to us, the House hands it to the Senate. It doesn't quite work that way. There's some simultaneous development going on. And so the House is developing this proposal. We're developing ours. But just to take a step back and look at sort of the general context of where we're at. So the governor's budget proposal increases most of state government expenses by about 2.5%. The exception to that is when you add in the additional revenue that we're getting from the surtax on income over $1 million. When you put that spending in, the number goes to about 7.4%. So the 2.5% is relatively modest compared to the other things, the other years that we've had. And particularly in recent years when we've had a large influx of federal funding and we've had pretty good economic returns, that revenue level is starting to stagnate and to plateau. And this budget year, the coming budget year, will be one that we start to really see the results of that. Now, remember that the millionaire's tax funding must go to transportation and education. And we have been using it for what I think are some particularly good purposes in the educational realm, school meals, free community college, some of those kinds of things. And so those funds aren't really available for some of the meat and potatoes things that are in the rest of state government. So I particularly emphasize that 2.5% as being a relatively low number that we have to work with. And out of that 2.5%, we have to pay for debt service and our unfunded pension liability and a tremendous amount of healthcare spending. So the amount that's discretionary, and I use that term loosely, is a very limited amount of money. So in her budget proposal, the governor increased funding for Chapter 70 by about $420 million to reflect the continuing implementation of the Student Opportunity Act, which I think everyone here knows we passed in 2019. There's a 6-year implementation schedule. We're at roughly year 4. The governor makes a $420 million installment toward completing the implementation of that $1.5 billion total investment. One of the things, however, that I'm always very quick to point out about that is that when you see those large numbers, and you'll often read newspaper reports that say, this is the most amount of money that Massachusetts has ever spent on education. Well, that's because the Student Opportunity Act ratcheted the number up, and every year we increase by that amount more. But the way the Chapter 70 formula works is that we can pour a very large amount of money into the top of it. But by the time it works its way down to a lot of the school districts in our area, it doesn't move the needle a tremendous amount. So that's because, and I think we need to talk a lot about this tonight, but that's because many of our school districts are minimum aid districts. And it's important to understand that there is a hold harmless provision that prevents those school districts from actually being cut. And instead of being cut, they receive minimum aid. In this case, the governor has proposed $75 per pupil as our minimum aid number. Now, last year, we were actually able to get to $104 minimum aid per pupil. And that was a significant increase because before that, it had been hovering in the area of $30, $40, $50 per pupil, and we were able to increase it significantly. The disappointing part about that is that for all the work that was done to get us to that $104, it still doesn't move the needle that much. So the governor's proposal, for instance, at $75 per pupil would move us in Gloucester to about a $225,000 or so increase. And so there's a bit of a dissonance between saying, okay, we're investing $420 million in education, but in Gloucester we see $225,000. And so there's two pieces to this that are important. Representative Ferrante and I continue to work to increase minimum per pupil aid because it's the tool that we have and because it doesn't necessarily run through the formula that disadvantages us. The same is true for special education. So special education through the circuit breaker does not run through the Chapter 70 formula. So we spend a lot of time trying to increase that number because we're treated pretty much equally with every other school district in the Commonwealth. So we tend to focus on minimum per pupil aid and special education circuit breaker because that's when we get the most return for our effort on this in terms of the budget debate. We need to change that. And one of the most significant things that's happening on Beacon Hill is a movement that I personally been working on for many years to be able to revisit the foundation budget formula. We've all talked about it in the past. And I think you know that, and I won't speak for the representative, I know she's supportive of this as well, but just speaking for myself. For years, I have been offering the amendment in the budget to reconstitute the Foundation Budget Review Commission. And really, until we can accomplish that and begin a real conversation about changing the formula, we're not going to see the kind of change that we all want. We have got to make it our goal that for communities like this one and school districts like this one, we're no longer going to be in the category of minimum per pupil aid because we can fight that fight for a very long time. And as I mentioned, it doesn't give us the kind of results that we need to get. And just to go back for a moment in history, when we passed the Education Reform Act of 1993, very long time ago, the intent was that every few years the foundation budget would get reviewed. It really never was. And a group of us worked very hard to get the Foundation Budget Review Commission back in action, and we succeeded in 2015. That's a very long time for that formula not to be reviewed. And when it got reviewed, the Foundation Budget Review Commission went across the Commonwealth, did a great job holding hearings, hearing input, but it only looked at one part of the equation. The part of the equation that says, is the foundation budget reflective of the actual cost of educating a student in Massachusetts according to the dictates of state government? Well, it's no surprise that the commission's results confirm what we all knew. It did not. So over the years, because it was never reviewed, the difference, the gap between what the foundation budget formula provided and the cost of educating a student was large, and it was growing. So we were able to make adjustments in the Student Opportunity Act. But largely those adjustments were based on a commission that only looked at the cost side and didn't look at the funding side. It didn't look at the way the ability communities have to pay, the fairness between similar communities and how much they have to pay, the local contribution requirements, the impact of property valuation, particularly in coastal communities. None of those things got considered. And so it's long overdue that we revisit this and we have a serious discussion about the other half of the foundation budget. Now, when we did the Student Opportunity Act, I was able to amend it to require that it be reviewed every 10 years. And we're coming up on that. But there's also a tremendous amount of momentum developing to begin that review now. And so for years, as I mentioned, I've been offering the legislation, offering the amendments. This year, not only did I offer a measure to that effect, but the Senate Chair of the Education Committee, Senator Lewis, offered a bill as well, and I've joined with him in that effort. So we have a bipartisan effort to try to get some movement on reconstituting the Foundation Budget Review Commission with a broader charge to look at all of the elements, including how local school districts are paying for things. Because, and I'll just digress for a moment, one of the problems in many districts across the Commonwealth is that enrollment is declining, and the foundation budget provides funding according to enrollment, but costs are increasing. And so that delta is going to lead us to a train wreck over time. Some of it's actually happening right now. One of the things we were able to do in the Student Opportunity Act, and again, I'll just digress for a moment, and it was through the good work of the North Shore Superintendent's Roundtable. And I can never miss the opportunity to credit our superintendents with this, because when we asked them, what is one of the reasons or the main reason that we're seeing that increase in cost with a decreasing enrollment? And it was the complexity of the student population, the cost of special education, the cost of student transportation in special education. And that's why in the SOA, we were able to, for the first time, include a component for sped transportation in the circuit breaker. And that was part of the equation that helped suburban districts because of the additional cost of transportation. So we're able to do that. But we do need to come back. We need to have a serious conversation on the foundation budget. And it seems like the stars are lining up and the momentum is developing for us to begin to go down that path. One of the things that's amazing to think about in this regard is right now, out of there's, I believe, 312 school districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and more than 220 of them are receiving minimum per pupil aid. That's unacceptable. And so there's now an effort statewide called, I always get it backwards, it's either Project 211 or 211 Project. But since that project started, 20 or 30 more school districts have fallen to the level of minimum per pupil aid. But it's an attempt to organize those communities, to be able to create some political leverage, to be able to get at this task. And I am very hopeful, and again, been fighting this fight for a long time, but I'm hopeful that we're starting to get the traction that we need. If we are successful, that still means we're a couple of years away at least, because the commission will have to do its work, will have to make its recommendations, And we will have to begin to implement those recommendations. But think about this. We have been making steady increases in education funding ever since we enacted the Student Opportunity Act. We will be done soon. And we'll be ready to make additional increases in those investments. And they should be guided by a revised formula that is more fair, particularly to suburban school districts. So if we don't start now and get all that work done, by the time the Student Opportunity Act is fully implemented, it'll be late in the game. We need to be ready for when that happens. And I apologize, I am venting with you here a little bit, but I think it's very important. Along those same lines, whenever I go to a school district, and I'm sure that the representative hears the same thing, we continually hear about the cost of special education. We hear about its unpredictability. We hear about the cost of outplacements. Of course, we all know what happened 2 years ago when the Operational Services Division saw it fit to increase the tuition for those outplacements by 14%. Hopefully that will not happen again. Since it did happen, there was a lot of backlash, and I think they understand they can't make such pronouncements without advance warning and some additional discussion. So we also have legislation pending to do a top to bottom, stem to stern study of how we deliver special education in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There is no doubt that we need to deliver it. It is important, but we need to deliver it in the most cost-effective way and the way that is most effective for enabling students to reach their fullest potential. So I am of the opinion, and many others are too, that we need to look at that element of what we're doing and just understand, are we using the right combinations? Are collaboratives being used enough? Are they being used too much? What's the situation with outplacement? You know, where do we stand with that? And an important piece of this that I always try to focus on, and I promise I will breathe in a minute, but an important part of this that I always try to focus on is that we send a message collectively from state government that we should be talking about inclusion. And I believe that. I think inclusion is the best option when we have the capacity to achieve it. And so you always face that choice about, do we invest in expanding our teacher corps and our professional development to be able to, for instance, teach kids that are more further along on the autism spectrum, or do we outplace those kids? And that's a tough choice when you have limited resources. And so I think we need to review this and start to think about how we might do things differently. And what I mean by that is that right now, if you think about it, the only real support you get from state government for special education is when a student reaches 4 times the foundation budget. And we've since changed, we don't use that metric anymore. I'm dating myself. We use a number, but that's what it is. So most of those students that reach that level, it's because they're outplaced. So we're telling you we want to have inclusion, but we're only giving you financial support for outplacement. And so I sincerely believe that we need to have a conversation about the students that don't reach that 4 times foundation budget and how we can do better in making sure they stay included and how we can do it by elevating our teacher corps to be able to deliver that special education. And we won't get there unless we provide you with significant amounts of additional financial support. I know that. But again, I don't believe in doing things in a reactionary way. I think we need to study it. We need to understand the best path. And then we need to commit ourselves to providing those resources. So that's the end of my diatribe, I promise. But I'll also say that as we're putting together this budget, we're also facing the very uncertain situation in Washington and with the federal government. So like you, we are trying to understand what's going to happen in an environment where something is pronounced today, it changes tomorrow, and it changes again the day after that. So Representative Ferranti and her colleagues on the Ways and Means Committee are trying to anticipate what might happen. But it's a situation that we have not faced in a very long time, to have this degree of uncertainty in what's going to happen with the federal budget and with federal resources. And so we're trying to work through that. I do not sit on the Senate Ways and Means Committee. I appoint members to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And Margaret and I work very closely in all matters, but particularly in budgetary matters, to try to make sure that our voices in our region are properly heard. So we're trying to deal with that uncertainty. We've got a revenue picture that is, our revenue is leveling off at the state level. And we don't know what's going to happen at the federal level. And I'll just give you one example of how destabilizing a change at the federal level could be. Our spending on Medicaid, which we call Mass Health in Massachusetts, represents 36% of the entire state budget. If there is a reduction of any significance in the funding we receive for Medicaid, it will affect every other spending priority that we have. Now, we don't know what's going to happen. We hear different things. But until we get some clarity on that, we live with that degree of uncertainty. And obviously, we're going to do the very best we can to make sure we deal with whatever happens and mitigate any harm and keep state government operating in an effective, stable way. And the last thing that I'll say, and obviously want to let Representative Ferrani have a chance to speak and also Bill answer your questions, is that oftentimes lately we get calls. And the calls are along the lines of, if the federal government starts making cuts to X or Y, will you be able to backfill that? And the answer is, we have a limited capacity to backfill, but if the cuts are substantial, we do not. One of the things that I'm proudest of is the work that we've done in a bipartisan way to reach the level of our stabilization fund of $9 billion. That's an incredible accomplishment that reflects fiscal discipline, a lot of hard choices, a lot of careful decision-making. We thought that fund at the end of COVID was going to be at zero. It's at $9 billion, and that's a big number. But if we start to see substantial cuts at the federal level, the stabilization fund won't last long and it won't withstand that. The other thing that's important to remember about the stabilization fund is that it is important to our credit rating and our borrowing costs. So if we start relying too much on the stabilization fund and depleting it, then the folks that rate our bonds are going to reduce our rating and it's going to cost us more for debt service. So there's a balance there between how much you draw from the stabilization fund and how much you keep in it. And as you move forward, to try to keep everything whole as best you can. And that's why you haven't seen a lot of declarations from folks in various elements of state government that we'll backfill this or we'll backfill that, because until we know the whole picture, we can't speak in realistic terms about what that backfill might look like. So I'll stop. I hope that I've met Melissa's expectation and
Way up here.
and again, I will be happy to defer to my colleague.
Okay. Representative Ferrante, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, Bruce. Nice overview, and I couldn't ask for a better legislative partner. Thank you, Bruce, for the closeness that we work together and for that overview. Just want to pick up where Bruce left off and then go into my talking points as well. But just to put in perspective, $9 million on the stabilization fund, our federal reimbursement for Medicare and Medicaid on the federal level is $16 billion. So when people say, do you have enough money to backfill? The answer is no, because that's just one account. And if anything likewise that is being anticipated comes to fruition, the answer is probably going to be no. In addition to saying that, just to give you an idea of what the Ways and Means Committee has in totality to increase on our budget from last year is $880 million. So on a $56.8 billion budget, $880 million, and that includes trying to compensate for all of the cost of living increases. However, even saying that, I think the senator's right in terms of we need to focus our advocacy on fully funding the circuit breaker. If we fully fund the circuit breaker, that is $520 million against $880 million. If we continue with school lunch, that's $30 million against the fair share amendment of $1 billion. If we continue on with an increase in the Student Opportunity Act, that's $480 million against the $880 million. And then if we continue to spend in our vocational schools and helping startups and our schools, our public schools that are non-trade schools but have a vocational departments, that's $75 million against $1 billion from the the fair share amendment, and then the $880 million that's generally for everything on the general budget. So when we talk about how tight the state budget is, I think all of you can appreciate how tight those numbers are. And yet that's what's proposed in the governor's budget. And that's something that we're looking to maintain. But I can't promise you the governor made that budget before Trump was fully in swing and sworn in and started with all of his executive orders of cut this and cut that. And we still don't know. You want to talk about uncertainty. We know he signed an executive order to cut the U.S. Department of Education, and we don't even know what the implications of that are yet. And so our budget may, in fact, look different than the governor's because now we still have uncertainty, but we have a little bit more information in terms of some of the directions he's going. But the uncertainty is so great that at 9 o'clock, you get a fax or an email saying, this is what we think the cuts are going to be. At 11 o'clock, you get, no, we're not going to cut that. At 1 o'clock, you get an email that says, but we're going to freeze all of these accounts and still make further decisions. And at 3 o'clock, you get an email that's completely different from the 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 1 o'clock. And that's just the nature of the beast that we're dealing with right now. So it's hard to say where we're going to land. The state budget will be out on April 16th. Not the state budget, House version of the state budget. And then we'll know a little bit more of what we're doing. And I would say it'd be fair to say whatever numbers we use may change by the time the Senate produces their budget, because they'll have another month's worth of executive orders and emails coming from the White House to try to figure out exactly what the executive orders mean. Just a couple of things that I was thinking about that we can do that are positive to work together. One is let's continue to advocate for 100% on the circuit breaker. And what I would love from the school committee is sort of written testimony, because we are having these hearings across the state. And even though we had labor, housing, and workforce development here in Gloucester, it doesn't mean that if you send me something on education, we can't put that into the mix. And so please, we're open for that. We want you to be part of our deliberations. So in the next week or so, if you can send me a letter saying here are our priorities, here are our shortcomings, here are some of the things we'd like the state to do, that would be really helpful for us, because we could talk about how we had this meeting tonight and how we're going to have a similar one in Rockport, and we're going to ask them to do the same. The second thing is we had that line item we were talking about. There is a line item for high schools that want to have vocational departments. And I think we've done a great job, and the vocational school's done a great job applying for World Workforce Skills grants. But I think there's another play, and the mayor Bruce and I talked to the mayors. We said monthly at our last meeting. We talked about having a meeting with the superintendent and perhaps with you, Kathy, just in terms of what is available for vocational schools. And Gloucester actually meets the designation because of the way the vocational school is written. And so I think it would be good to put in an application, but I can't promise anything. But I think there's a play there to be made for more support for the vocational school. What else do I have? The free meal program, I know that's still a priority for the House. So we would definitely like that to continue. And obviously the 480 that we talked about for the increase in Chapter 70 monies as well. So Drew can follow up with these points with you for the letter in addition to whatever else you might want to add. But I think there's some more plays that we can play out here to get more dollars, even though things are tight, in the line items that we fund. And then I don't want to keep you forever, and I know Bruce has that silver tongue that just encapsulates everything so well. So open it up to questions after that if there's something that you'd like us to talk a little bit more on or explain a little better.
Great. The mayor has a question.
I've got a few. So first of all, I guess I'll vent too, Senator, because about the federal dollars, I think everybody knows that we, along with a handful of other states, spend a lot more dollars than we get back. Absolutely. So it's kind of gets me a bit upset that we're talking about cutting while we're supporting states that are not paying their fair share. And you mentioned the unfunded pension liability in the state. As you know, we have a deadline of 2034. We're spending about $15 million this year to get us up to speed. So we're ready for 2034. By 2034, it'll be $20 million. So whoever's sitting in these seats in 2035 is going to be in good shape because we'll have an extra $20 million. But until then, we'll start right on OPEB. I was going to say the other post-employment benefits. So just I had a mayor's meeting today in Westfield, and everything we just talked about was pretty much all we got from every corner of the state. One thing I want to ask about, because I know MMA is pushing to see about having a resolution to deal with Chapter 70 in UGA, to pull that out so that can sort of be approved now, so we cities and towns can start to build our budget without that being part of the bargaining chip later, or if there's any movement on that. And I'll just run through the questions.
Sure. So oh, you want to keep
let me answer a couple of this. The other one is, and then you saw that the documents that the superintendent sent you after we had our meeting about just our budget, we're going to go over again later, about the special education budget that was about for district placements of tuition was $4 million, $4.5 million in 2022. This year, $9 million. I mean, those are unsustainable increases. When you plug in a 14% increase on the providers, it just leaves us scratching our head. And I think that's kind of about it. I mean, there's a million other things, but the big one is MMA wanted us to lobby for that question about resolutions to Chapter 70 and UGA. So I'm just wondering if there's much movement on that.
So that's what's known as an early local aid resolution.
Yeah.
Over the years, it used to be a fairly common practice, and the deadline used to be sometime in April for us to do that before we get into budget deliberations. One of the difficulties with it is that the last few times it was used, and that was a while ago, the agreement was that we passed the early local aid resolution, but it would lock in a maximum amount of aid.
Right.
So I know what people are trying to protect against is having a minimum, but it was very frustrating to me because the earlier practice had been to set it as the minimum and be able to add, but the later ones capped the local aid. So I view it with mixed emotions. I have been supportive personally of early local aid resolutions in the past for many reasons, but one of them is that as you're developing your budgets, you can have clarity on things like unrestricted general government aid and Chapter 70, when otherwise you wouldn't have those things for another several months. But I urge a word of caution that it's a double-edged sword.
Be careful what you wish for.
It gives you clarity, but it also limits. And so I'm certainly willing to think about doing it. I would defer to Ann Margaret because she's been on the front line of the hearings that Ways and Means has been having, but I have not heard any discussion of doing one.
Yeah, I just want to add that it's probably unlikely. And again, for the same reasons the senator said, but also just because of the uncertainty in Washington. It used to be that we knew where our reimbursements were going to be. And so if we knew where ours were going to be, then we could help you set for where, you know, yours would be. And right now everybody's just so skittish on the uncertainty that it's hard to say that we can say this is the number when we don't know what our own obligations are going to be if the cuts are made at that level. So so one, I don't think you want to block yourself into the minimum, because who knows? You know, Washington could surprise us and say it's just X, Y, and Z, and we're keeping this all whole. I doubt that that's the situation. I'm expecting it to be, you know, it's this, and this, and oh, by the way, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. So let's hope it's the first, the former, not the latter. But I just think given the climate of uncertainty, it puts us in a really difficult position in order to do that again. In terms of the sped drivers, I was very encouraged when the governor came before us, and we asked her if she would be open to reviewing what some of the sped drivers are and whether or not there's a way to put limits on them. So it's not 14% in 1 year or 20% in 1 year, that some of their costs go up to us and to the communities. And so I think you'll hear about us taking a look at that as well.
That'll be helpful. Questions?
No, first of all, I want to thank you both for coming tonight and talking to us. It's really, really helpful, and puts some clarity to a lot of questions that we obviously at the local level, you know, just funding our budget and making sure that our numbers work. A lot of it is, some of it's directed from the state level. I think one of the things that you said, Ann Margaret, that really is important to me is the advocacy of 100% funding for the circuit breaker. And what can we do as a committee outside of writing a letter? Is there anything we can do to, for lack of a better term, apply pressure to see that you know, is really high on the priority list at the state level?
So
but the biggest thing is and I know it sounds weird when we say write a letter, but that's really like is impactful because we as a committee go over all the letters that are sent. And so it's something I can bring, you know, forward to the House Ways and Means Committee as the vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee to say, you know, this is something we really need to be paying attention to. And I know other reps are asking their school committees to do that as well, to show that this, you know, really is a problem. And one that we think might be like, I want to give you something winnable, right? I don't want to give you something that's far-fetched. So I think that that's really important. And then if there's a lobby day or something for that comes up, I can definitely let you guys know, and you could come in to be a part of that. But, you know, I think the biggest thing is just keep the lines of communication between Bruce and I and yourselves, and let us keep bringing these things forward. That's the most impactful thing. It's one thing for Rep. Ferranti to go in and say, you know, as a statewide office holder on the budget, you know, this is something I think we should do. It's another one I can say, look, this is what my district wants unequivocally, because they wrote in and we've met with them, we've talked to them, and they followed up with a letter. So obviously it's really important to them.
Last question for me is, certainly not blind to it, but this is a huge priority for every district in the Commonwealth right now, you know, the funding of public education. I think for the people that are listening at home, just to hear, hey, it's recognizable at the state level and it's a priority at the state level is really, really important. To kind of put people at ease that, hey, the people that represent us recognize the need, and certainly trying to get it to the top of everybody's got priorities at the state level. So just to kind of put people at ease of hey, it really is a priority. Massachusetts is known for public education. You don't want to lose that, being known for great public education and, that it's a priority for you people as well as your colleagues.
So, Bill, I just want to touch on a couple of things. Number one, you also have tremendous power by working through some of the organizations that you're part of. So the Mayor mentioned Mass Municipal Association. One additional thing you could do is lobby MMA to make that circuit breaker full funding a priority for that organization, because they do carry a fair amount of weight in the process. Also, the Mass Association of School Committees and the Mass Association of School Superintendents. If they also said that these are priorities for us in the process, that would be helpful. So you could lobby them and get some additional leverage. And then the last thing I want to say is, we talked about the early local aid resolution. Over the years, and I believe this still to be true, the legislature and the administrations in both parties have been committed to making cuts to education and local aid a last resort, and have generally worked to hold them harmless even when we've had to cut other things. So not only is it a priority, but it's something that history has proven we defend even in a very difficult storm financially.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
You mentioned Senator Tar, property valuations in regards to the budget. How does that affect the budget?
So the Chapter 70 formula works in this way. It takes 11 factors and determines what the cost of educating a student in a community should be per pupil. It adds that up to a total, and then it looks at a community's ability to pay for that. And that ability to pay is measured in part by equalized property valuation and income. And so if those things are being given more weight, for instance, in a coastal community than they should be, then it appears that that community has a greater ability to pay. The state funds the difference between ability to pay and the cost. So that the property value weighs in the determination of ability to pay. And if it's overstated, then aid is reduced.
And that's where the commission comes in?
Yes, Foundation Budget Review Commission. And I should have mentioned, we can send you the 3 bills that I made reference to, so you can all take a look at it.
Couple things. First, thank you, Bruce Starr and Margaret. Gloucester is so fortunate to have Gloucester residents that represent us in the best way, and the access we have to you both is tremendous. And living in this community, that is a huge benefit, right? So regardless of any comments I make about how much you talk, I know that you are very well respected. We are very fortunate to have you both, and we always want to hear from you. But with that being said, so a couple things. First, a quick question. When do we normally find out the amount of funding that's coming from the federal government? Like, we have a schedule here, we know we hear from the mayor in April or May, and then things go forward. With all the uncertainty that's going on in the world, I'm trying not to play into all the drama and just hope and pray that there are decent human beings in the world out there and it's not going to be as bad as it sounds. So I'm trying to stick to facts and procedures. So when do we usually know, either one of you can help me with that, when what the federal funding coming to Massachusetts will look like?
So everyone knows that I'm certainly not an expert in the operations of the federal government. I'm not sure who is at the moment, but it operates in a different way than we do, because oftentimes the government continues an operation through continuing resolutions. So there isn't, in fact, there's not a very good record over the last several years of having a complete budget passed. So we get the information in bits and pieces based on those CRs. It is a good thing when there can be a complete federal budget. And the best answer I can give you is their fiscal year begins in October as opposed to ours. So we would have clarity maybe by then. But in the meantime, we divine what we can from when a continuing resolution passed. One of the ones that was most recently passed did contain some cuts. And so we were able to figure that out from that one. Yeah. But it's not as definitive a process because there isn't the same standard. So we need to have a balanced budget constitutionally, and the target is always July 1st. We don't always make that. We sometimes miss by some weeks, and hopefully not months. But the feds work on a different timetable.
Listen, I actually, so what happens, so there's the federal government process that Senator Tarr's talking about, and but separate, not kind of the typical schedule for us to get our title dollars allotment, you know what that is, and also IDEA.
Right.
Is July, early August every year.
Okay.
Okay. Again, as you
No,
said,
that's helpful because.
yes, that's typical.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's gonna be different this year, but we do we are anticipating some changes and lower amounts this year. We got to prepare for those. But as you're describing, it's tremendous uncertainty.
Yeah. No, and I get that. But like I said, I'm still on a path to believe that it's going to work out somehow because there'll be too much disruption in the whole United States if it doesn't, right? Not just in Massachusetts. So,
Wait, Melissa, your camera's off. Can you turn it on?
now. Sorry.
Wow.
Okay.
I have reasons. We can talk about that later.
All right, that's okay. I just.
I'll talk about it though. And I'll try to get out of the way of my computer. So you talk about the foundation budget and the review that's long overdue. So having sat here for 18, 19 years now in this chair representing the school committee, I can say way back in 2008 when I got on the committee, market was crashing, 9C cuts coming. They were talking then about reviewing the foundation budget. So when I hear this tonight, I'm hearing a little bit of blah, 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 right? No disrespect. I believe that the work is being done to try to change the formula because we're talking about it a lot more now than we did back then. So I guess my question is, how confident are you that addressing the foundation budget, which I believe is a key to communities like Gloucester, that you say it won't be, you might not see changes for a couple of years, but what can be done in the meantime to put more pressure on changing that foundation budget? And also maybe adding to the formula, you know, you said there's the 11 different triggers to the equation. So as you know, in Gloucester, we are competing with other city departments for our school budget. Right, not just the way the foundation budget worked out, but we're competing with a sewer treatment plant right now that is so costly. So in your thought process with the foundation budget change, is there a way to put a trigger in it where not only is it just the ability to pay, but also what is outstanding in that community that is like a crisis, a water crisis, that more demand is put on the city budget to take away from the school budget? I mean, in my opinion, we are having a mental health crisis in Massachusetts and throughout probably the national United States. We have 60% of our students that are high needs. So you say that cost of education is going up, even though enrollment is going down. But if you look at that enrollment, the numbers might be down, but the needs are higher. When I started here, I think it was 24 or 25%. Looking at the totality of what high needs definition is, we're much higher. So there's so many things that have changed since years ago when we were discussing the foundation budget that I think it needs more of an examination with more triggers in it to determine how to properly fund communities like us. Because it's not fair to our students and our teachers. You know, not only are students in crisis, but teachers throughout Massachusetts are burnt out. You know, they're doing a lot more work than they've ever had to do. You know, and a lot of us are in the workforce. I'm not saying it's just teachers, but I just feel like if there's not a bigger conversation about school funding, we're going to crash and burn in a way that no one has thought of, that we're not talking about. It can't just be the foundation budget. It can't just be the circuit breaker. There needs to be more conversation at the government level, especially with the dismantling of the Department of Education. If the messaging is that states are responsible for education, okay, now what is Massachusetts going to do to address this? Yes, I believe some funding is going to come. I don't think the cuts are going to be as bad as we think under the IDEA, but there's a a lot of work that I think the state needs to do at this point to deal with the crisis of public education, because it is getting harder and harder every year. And like I said, sitting here now compared to 2008 when the market crashed then, it's the same situation, only different triggers and different circumstances. I don't even know what my question is to you, but
I'm trying to keep up with you. And I'm gonna try to unpack all that.
yeah, it's a lot. Sorry, I'm throwing this all at once, trying not to take up too much time.
So it is true,
I just have a lot of concerns. That this isn't being addressed.
as well, we
Right,
should,
needs to be.
and we do as well. 2008, we talked about the Foundation Budget Review Commission. We got it done in 2015.
Right.
And if we didn't get it done, you would have not had the student opportunity.
Sure.
My point is, I can't guarantee you that the Foundation Budget Formula Review Commission and recommended changes will deliver what we want. But I can guarantee you, if we don't have one, we won't get significant change.
But is there another way? Like hearing the foundation is gonna change, yeah, okay, so it took 8 years before. Is there something else other than addressing the foundation
Yes.
budget that can be done so that state takes more responsibility for education? Because clearly that's what the federal government wants. So what does that interpret to?
So Ann Margaret has actually already alluded to one thing, and that is we can work on the special education circuit breaker. I've mentioned another. Can we help with kids that don't reach the 4 times foundation budget threshold? Because those are more direct. We don't have to change a whole formula to get there. We just have to pick up a greater percentage of what we already recognize.
Okay.
So we can work on those things. One of the things that I'm hearing about when I talk to school districts all over the state is the cost of health insurance increasing significantly. There might be a way that we can try to get at that. It's also one of the factors in the foundation budget formula, by the way, that contributes to the cost of educating a student. So there are things that we can do. Minimum per pupil aid is one of those Band-Aids. And so we can work to increase that. It's at $104 in the current fiscal year. As the representative mentioned, the governor's proposing 75. We are going to work very hard to move that number back up. I personally, until we can resolve the issue with the foundation budget, I'd like it to be $200 a student. And if you watch budget debates, you will see I offer amendments to that effect,
Yeah.
because I believe it.
Right.
So there are things that we can do that do not depend on a change in the formula. But a change in the formula is the only thing that will give us, in my humble opinion, a sustainable difference in the resources that we have. Now, with regard to the other factors, so for instance, the treatment plan, we've been working very hard with the mayor, trying to find the financial supports, because if we don't get them, that plant will be unaffordable. And so we need to work on that. Could we take into account some of those things? We could in the foundation budget formula. It would be hard because now you have to have a standard way of doing it.
Right.
So if you say, well, okay, if you have capital costs in excess of the average, for instance, maybe that would be a way to do it. There is a way we used to do that, and we haven't done it in a while, and it's called a pothole account.
Talking about bubble money the other day, where'd you go?
We used to have an account that we nourished with a modest amount of money to say that if a community has an unanticipated expense, we're gonna try to fill that. That actually came to our rescue. I'm trying to recall if you were on the committee or not, but there was one time in particular where the crisis in the fishing industry was one of the factors that we legislated into the pothole account. And that was able to deliver us fairly substantial amount of money. That is a tool that we could use as well. So there are those things that are outside of the realm of the foundation budget, and we do work to pursue them. But I would never want us to lose sight of the big picture. And that is, if we don't have a top to bottom review of the foundation budget, we won't get the kind of significant change that we need. And for the foreseeable future, we'll be working on these much more itinerant kind of fixes.
Let's see, and this is my lesson, that frustrates me, right? I feel like I'm not walking away with what I need to walk away with from this conversation. It's not any blame would be wrong.
I've certainly talked to them.
But what you just said, right? That's exactly like the mayor said, in 2040, we're not gonna have a pension problem, right? Because we're suffering now paying the $20 million per year. From what I'm hearing from you, is by 2035, maybe we'll have a new foundation budget, right? So what's happening now? Like, what is the state gonna do to react to what's going on with all the politics in the world? To take steps and take ownership of public education in a different way and commit to students and those teaching our students so that public education isn't sinking, because that's what I feel like is happening right now. I think I said it to Bill Melvin a year ago, like public education is in trouble. We are in trouble. It's not getting better. It's getting more difficult with more demands both on our children and our staff every day. I sat here for 18, 19 years. Maybe next year, my fingers are always crossed. So next year might be a better year. We haven't got there. And I just feel like, I don't want to say not enough's being done because I know you both work so hard and advocate for us in a very good way, but I just don't feel like it's getting us forward. I feel like we're just sitting and sinking. And I don't know how to
and we
move past
appreciate that.
Yes, I appreciate that, and I appreciate what, you know, the senator's been saying. I appreciate what you're saying, Melissa, but understand on the state level, there's 160 of me, there's 40 of Bruce. And if I grabbed 160 of me and subtracted myself out and left it to 159 and said, okay, who doesn't think the foundation budget formula works? 159 people would raise their hand. And if I said, okay, on a white piece of paper that you're going to fold in half, tell me why, there would be 159 different reasons. And so the hard part is trying to figure out where the consensus lies and where we can move. And I can tell you, and this is not being dramatic, this is not drama queen stuff, you know, the uncertainty that Washington brings has a lot of people holding their breath right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you look at the way, you know, cuts are being made indiscriminately on some certain things, you know, it's hard for us to anticipate what that is. And so, you know, is that the state has to grab hold, but the federal government has to grab hold too and realize that they own some of this as well. And again, if they cut it, the dollars just aren't there to make it work. You know, every hearing that I go to, whether it's the Secretary of the Environment, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Economic Development, if I honored everybody's request for what they want, and we've said repeatedly, we're at a 2.5% increase. And that's a similar increase to what you face, right? Because you have Proposition 2.5 governing a lot of this thing. 2.5% increase. Every person who's come before us has annoyed the hell out of me because they're asking for 6 and 8% increases. And it's okay. Where do you want me to squeeze 8% out of 2% if we were just to look across the budget? And it's difficult. And I ran through the numbers at the beginning because we talked about $880 million of new spending because our, you know, tax revenues have flattened out. And just in education alone, we bumped that up to 1.375 with different programs from stretching from the Student Opportunity Act and our operational expenses that we can have in addition to trying to pay for every union that's going to come before us looking for a 2 to 3%, you know, raise and what have you. So it's as frustrating for me as in Bruce as it is for you. I know how important the schools are. If it weren't for the schools and the education I received, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I know that. And yet Gloucester High School prepared me for, you know, a collegiate degree at Tufts, Harvard, and Suffolk Law. And I am indebted to the public school system for that. But it's extremely frustrating on our end as well.
Thank you.
I just want to pick up on one quick point, and that is mental health, because it is definitely something we need to pay more attention to. And I know there are a number of teachers here, and I want to express my gratitude to them because a lot of the weight of dealing with those issues has fallen on them without any additional compensation, without any more time in the day. And so the mental health issue is something, again, that the North Shore superintendents have done a good job of helping us to understand in a way that I will say for myself, I did not understand before that conversation. And there has been, in years past, we've done a very modest amount of money to help with the cost of mental health in school districts. And by modest, I mean modest, $6 million statewide. But that is another way that we've tried to pick up some of that cost. But I want to make sure that we emphasize that is a huge factor that we have to recognize and deal with. And a lot of the districts have used that money for professional development because the teachers are on the front line. There's nobody standing behind them to come to the rescue. And so we need to fortify them as best we can. So it is an important point.
Just think of some regulation for private placements and things like that that could happen to keep the cost down, you know, there's gotta be something else.
Well, and that's an important point. The dollar you save is as important as the dollar you get in additional funding.
Right.
So we do need to think about that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I think I'll use Jeremy's computer while mine charges. So I think this is a little bit quicker of a question. And Margaret, is it 520 million to fully fund the circuit breaker, or is it 420? Oh, you're muted.
I have
Yeah, it's 520 million to fully fund circuit breaker, and it's 480 million that we're fully funding the student that the governor put in her budget to fully fund the Student Opportunity Act.
How much are we bringing in from the millionaire's tax?
So we conservatively focused on $1 billion last year. It looked like we brought in $2 billion this year, but I want to say in the millionaire's tax, that is a constitutional amendment. And I cannot change this, Bruce cannot change this. It's a 6-year process to change it. In that, in the language of the millionaire's tax, it says that that money cannot be used to backfill existing programs. So we don't have the luxury of saying, can we take that money and transfer it to Chapter 70? Because Chapter 70 is an existing program. And who would sue us if we did do that is the transportation side, because they would love to have anything that we're not using or not using properly to go onto their side of the line. So it puts us in a very interesting situation in terms of what we can spend money on and what we can't from the millionaires.
Wait, so if I'm to understand you, there's $2 billion there, which goes between transportation and education.
Yeah.
But it cannot go to any existing programs, meaning circuit breaker, meaning Chapter 70, meaning any of those things?
It can go to it can't go to Chapter 70. However, there's a reason why it can go to the school lunch program, because that's new. And it can go to, I'd have to double check on the circuit breaker.
So that's fascinating, right? Is there a percentage in this bill of how much goes to transportation and how much goes to education?
There was an agreement between the two parties that they asked us to honor that said 50% would go to transportation and 50% would go to the teachers, not the teachers, education.
Okay, so just, I mean, sort of thinking outside the box, and I'm sure you've both and all of your colleagues have thought of this, but can we, I mean, new programs, right? New programs that bring money into the schools.
Yeah, that's Drew. I just lost everybody.
Oh, yeah, and Margaret.
We can still hear you, Margaret.
So anyway, that's sort of a shocking bit of information for me. I assumed that money could come into a Student Opportunity Act and Chapter 70. So what outside of school lunch or about school? I mean,
sorry, I just lost everybody for a second.
Okay.
So whatever you just said, just repeat it.
So it's just, man, Margaret, that's sort of shocking to me.
Yes.
That money,
Yes.
you know, that money that was sold as a budget, as a constitutional amendment for education and transportation can't go to existing programs.
Yes, and so we had this discussion with the union leaders, the Mass Teachers Association, when they put this together. And their fear was that we would use it to backfill Chapter 70. And so I don't know why that fear was. I think they always thought we were going to be in a great position economically going forward. And we said, just realize that if there's a crisis or something, you know, you're stuck. And they're like, and at the time they said, well, we're fine with that. So in a matter of fact, that's why we saw some of the teachers union striking against the school committee, because they wanted you to put pressure on us to use the millionaire's tax to give more money to cities and towns for teacher salaries. And then once we said we can't do that because that's through a Chapter 70 mechanism, then everything started to calm down because their membership was a little upset with them that provision's in there because they thought that money was going to be used on salaries.
Okay, I'm suitably shocked, and that's an important explanation. So thank you both, and thank you for both.
Jeremy, do you have any
Can
questions?
I follow up on that?
Sure. Go ahead.
As far as transportation, the 50% of this millionaire's tax, and it has to go to new programs, is that also on the transportation side? They can't use it for existing?
So the language says that it's not to be used to supplant existing spending. The concern was that we would take the millionaire's tax money and cut the regular spending and use the millionaire's tax, and there wouldn't be a net gain. And so with the transportation side, the same holds true. However, one of the places in transportation where we've seen a lot of money going is into the MBTA, and particularly with regard to deferred maintenance. And so deferred maintenance, the maintenance wasn't happening. And so I believe, and Ann Margaret can correct me on this one, but the proposal for this year is somewhere north of $440 million of that millionaire's tax amount going into the MBTA.
Okay, and here's a suggestion. Transportation, we have a large part of our budget going to out of district transportation. Perhaps they could create a new program that would help us transport our students to their facilities.
Yeah, now there's a lot of creative thinking going on about this. Again, there's a lot of thinking about, you know, how creative do you get until somebody sues you, right? Because then it's all for naught, and then there is a lot of
Yeah. 3 years before the judge gets here.
But we also did put transportation in the circuit breaker to try to get at that. Whether there could be a new program and that would be construed as supplanting or not, I'm not sure. Yeah.
So we had drafted a letter of advocacy, but based upon what you've said tonight, I think we should work on providing, we should work on some edits to be more specific with some history and just based upon what you've said, better get it there. So we will do that. And my only question is, when you say you have other people also supporting the Foundation Budget Review Committee, when somebody does not, what is the reason they would not out of your 200 and all your people? Why?
So the answer that I was getting up until recently was that we shouldn't do anything before the Student Opportunity Act is fully implemented. One of the interesting turns of events here has been when I've been offering it in the budget. The opposition sometimes has actually come from the chairman of the Committee on Education, who now has sponsored a bill with me to do this. So I think the tide has begun to turn. Ann Margaret made an important point, and it's why we need the commission. Because if you're going to try to change the formula, the most basic instinct people are going to have is, am I a winner or a loser in the new formula? And you better be able to defend it, and you need extra dollars so there are no losers. But that's pretty much, it's been folks that are happy with the status quo, number one, or think that we should let the Student Opportunity Act be fully implemented.
And I'm sure there's very much some models that say, no, it'll be like going off a cliff at that time if we are not prepared to continue to increase education.
I would say this, Kathy, it's amazing if you look at the communities, the districts that benefit the most from the SOA, it's in the neighborhood of 20 or 30.
We were grateful for benefit that we received. We obviously now totally flattened out. But that was nice that our, demographics that we have were recognized, and there was, which is why we've always advocated for circuit breaker for any extra funding, because we know it directly comes and helps expenses people. Yeah, I appreciate the complexity on the state level in terms of trade-offs, because you make them, the mayor makes them at the city side, we make them when we're facing challenges across the budget. And there's only so much you can do, but we'll definitely help advocate and make sure people are informed about the challenges economically to provide the best education. And as Melissa said, we're very fortunate to have both of you representing us. Could be more responsive and more hardworking in the right areas, and so many areas. I mean, not just here. You can talk completely about education, like that's the only thing you do, and I tell you to do that for so many areas. Thanks, take up.
Kathy, can I just add one thing?
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you, Senator Tar and Rep. Fronte, for being here, and also as Kathy just said so nicely, your partnership and your support of our schools. In so many ways you do that. I do want to highlight one thing that's in the packet for you, which is Senator Tar has filed a bill, an act to establish the Middle School Innovation Fund, which he's done that in working with Amy Donnelly and Dave Brown, and using our science center and our science center programs at the middle school as a model to hopefully, invest in not only Gloucester but other middle school programs, so that they can learn from ours, because ours is really a leader, as you both have seen, and support. And so just really appreciate your leadership on this, on the middle schools and the middle as well.
And Ben, don't forget that I'm supporting that effort. It's just Bruce and I flipped a coin.
Yes.
Yeah. So this would get some funding.
Potentially.
Out of all that, you're going to start like stockpiling.
I just want to point out the way that this came about is in my conference center at home, and Margaret and I locked ourselves in for several hours at a time with Dave and Amy. And they really, we asked them, what would a perfect program look like? And I think we came pretty close with writing this language. So thank you for making mention of that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, in that case, the innovation school model is really kind of what got a lot of thinking going. So this, and then no one's talked about that for years. I don't think the Department of Ed looks at innovation school and does anything. But this would be great.
Yeah. And Margaret, just want to thank you for this, for the innovation fund as well. Of course, I didn't mention your involvement, but also wanted to just acknowledge your support of our ProTech programs. You mentioned them tonight, but every time I see you talk about it and make sure our skills grants are going forward and we're aware of all the opportunities. So just deeply appreciate both of you and your partnership and friendship, and always looking out for our schools, and tonight is a good example of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ben, thank you for your cooperation with us too, and including in us and all of that. I think it's important. I think we've come to a point in time now that the pendulum swung, and for some students, look, you go into a trade, you're going to make more than the college graduate, the average college graduate overall. So we need to help reduce some of that stigma that's involved and go into taking the vocational route as opposed to the collegiate route. I always tell the kids at the vocational school that we make it much more than Bruce and I ever dreamed of if they go into a trade.
But you don't want us to try to fix your plumbing. I just.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
I would just make one more point. We are really lucky in this city to have the Gloucester Ed Foundation.
Yes.
And I know this past weekend, hour of play, and I know saw a number of you there. I was didn't do so well in the Simon Says contest. The mayor managed to avoid that, but just want to say it was great to see the city turn out the way that it did last weekend, and we are so fortunate to have that foundation to help us do.
You get the lots of great rates. Superintendent's gonna do it.
Is there a weight restriction on that? My niece is fully capable. She's done that the last couple of years. So I delegate that to the next generation.
Well, we know
Thank
you've
you.
had a long day, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you, Margaret.
We are having an update from Amy Cam, our Director of Social Emotional Learning and Mental Health, on our mental health and social emotional support, if you want to stick around for this.
I'm gonna get the mirror back as confused. So.
It's okay.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, so we will resume oral communications.
Awesome. I'm Noam Graham. I live at 1 Bedford Way here in Gloucester, and I feel like that was the most exquisite segue I ever could have received, because the first note on my speech today is gratitude. And just seeing all of those incredible connections and knowing how hard everybody's working towards that single goal of amazing education is excellent. And I teach the seminar class at O'Malley Innovation Middle School, and it is part of their innovation, and GF is also top of my list here. They made it possible for me to come back for teaching just 6th grade. And I just, you know, the gratitude piece starts a long time ago, back in 2018. GF's given me grants, have opportunities to work with the kids in the district. Amy Cam has worked so hard to get me grants to be in the district. Then the district took me on for the 23-24 year. Had to cut me last year. And I have incredible dedication and will to face this problem of the mental health crisis that we have here. I'm just going to speak for Gloucester because that's where my heart and soul is. And our recognition, and the reason I came tonight was because in Ben's notes, I know he's talking about the mental health and the social emotional support that we can offer our students. And so as being part of that tier 1, meaning the whole population approach to it, I know the money's tight, and I just got a fabulous insight into even the bigger situation, the bigger picture. But I love the thinking outside of the box approach that Melissa brought up. Laura, you asked amazing questions. Is there a way that maybe we can make mental health and the innovative approach to giving, I jokingly call human skills 101, but how is it that we help the kids really understand how they resolve conflicts in a healthy way? How is it that we help kids see the strength of their identity so they don't have to go down substance use paths? Can we craft something as a community that accesses those fair share amendment funds in a really creative way so we don't have to let that drop off? I'm assuming, Ben, we haven't had a conversation, but I'm assuming that I'm not in the budget because of the intense special ed needs we have, and I get it. But how can we make this really important programming still happen? And like I said, the creativity, the thinking outside of, you know, our narrow lanes has been really inspiring to see tonight. Doing the tier 1 and then tier 2 supports could be a critical way that we are able to keep funds back in our district instead of bleeding out with all of our super high need special ed, you know, especially in the behavioral realm. So that's something I feel like, yes, the state is turning its wheels slowly. The state has been doing its work at their pace, but are there ways that we can continue programming, reaching the kids who really, I think they have a chance of staying here in the district if they're getting the support they need. And I mean, Samantha spoke so beautifully to it. Can we get the people on the ground that can keep our kids here where they deserve to be? We need them here and they need us there to back them up. So I believe in resiliency. Gloucester kicks butt when it comes to resiliency. We've been through a lot and I know there's ways we're going to solve this. And so I just thank you for taking the time. I thank you for making it a priority, Ben. And if you guys have any questions about what's happening in the classroom, GF came today to do observations. And I had an extraordinary conversation with Don Saruf, who's on the GF board. I've had incredible experiences with the students too. like Kevin's son Oliver, he's incredible, Pete, so sorry. So I think where there's a will, there's a way.
Time's way up, but thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Where there's a will, there's a
For
way,
your
and I'm
positive comments.
ready
I
to
appreciate
put
it very
myself
much.
behind any efforts that you guys are up for.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks for the extra time.
Hello, my name is Eric Lee. I'm a high school biology teacher, biotech formerly, and forensic science teacher, but I'm also a Senate District Coordinator for the MTA. So I work part-time to try to advance many of the different things that you have spoken for. And I'd like to submit to you as well, too, some of the legislative priorities. If you're not familiar, the MTA does have a grassroots division as well as a legislative division here where they work towards trying to have these things funded as well. And I gotta say, I've come before this committee for multiple years asking for endorsements for the Student Opportunity Act and the Fair Share Amendment. So let's make certain that we realize here that those are the additional funds that have come into the budget. And Massachusetts is constitutionally has to have a balanced budget. But if it was not for the action of our members and the rest of the public to convince them to pass these things, when there was lots of different conflicting things as to how people would leave the state on the millionaire's tax and everything else, the Fair Share Amendment, if it wasn't for our members and for the positivity of all of our educators to try to increase this pool so we could serve our students here, much of it wouldn't happen. So I ask in the future that when we talk of the MTA here, we talk of it and realize the efforts that are being put forward to do that here. We are setting up, of course, our sessions with both Ann Margaret and Bruce, and we've talked to them for years as well to move this forward. So we don't always come asking for things, we try to increase it. And I gotta say, I have to congratulate you. This is the first time that I've seen for this length of time the budget discussed. I know you do it on your own and negotiations, and it's very difficult, of course, what you do and advocating, but to have this where the public can see the difficulties that we all face and how you're working to try to solve this and how we all have some commonality towards this is an extremely positive thing. And the idea when I saw that there may be a proclamation or some type of advocacy, that's what I said, we need all to be advocates for better funding to solve these problems. So when I hear you saying this here, I'm hopeful that this continued effort will continue to move forward to make it easier on all of us and that we can see that our education is properly funded for all of our students. So I'd like to submit to you these legislative priorities, and so many of these bills are exactly what they spoke about here, about what we advocate for and do every day, try to see that our students will be taken care of. So I'll have this over here. Thank you.
Okay. We have somebody online, Christine Travers. Speak now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can, yeah.
Thank you, great. All right, my name is Christine Travers. I live at 25A Uncas Road, and I'm a speech pathologist at West Parish Elementary School. I want to thank those of you who have recognized that educators have been on the front line with students who have mental health issues with minimal support. It's important to recognize the dedicated educators across our district who work tirelessly every day to support, collaborate, and inspire our students. Despite facing daily challenges, they continue to put students first, often at their own expense. Their unwavering commitment to education, even in times of crisis, deserves both our recognition and our support. As we listen to the budget concerns at the state level and navigate uncertainty at the federal level, it is critical that we proceed thoughtfully. Now is not the time for making sweeping changes without a solid plan or having necessary staff and support systems in place. Our educators are already stretched thin, and any adjustments must be carefully considered to ensure we are not further compromising the quality of education our students receive. Now is the time for critical decision-making, as Senator Tarr stated. I urge the committee to prioritize stability, thoughtful planning, and investment in the staff we already have, the very people who have been holding our schools together. Let's work together to ensure that any changes made are in the best interest of students and staff alike. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Rich Francis, longtime social studies teacher at Gloucester High School. With all the recognition that I had seen earlier going on, I'd like to recognize two things. Thank you, Melissa, for understanding what the teachers are going through with everything that's been going on. And I would also like to recognize my colleagues who are the heart and soul of the school district and what we're trying to do with our students. With that said, I'm kind of going a little bit on my own little tangent today, which I did a couple weeks ago. I had actually intended on speaking to the state legislators, knowing that they were going to be here, but they left. So if it sounds like I'm talking to somebody else, bear with me. On average, 3 to 5 year olds have been found to ask hundreds of questions per day. Ask any of these people and they'll tell you it's probably more than that. While adults ask about 25 to 30 a day. So why do I bring this up? One question for me. The need for strong civics and humanities education across K to 12, and the addition of a 4th year of civics and social studies as a graduation requirement. In recent years, our education system has increasingly prioritized creating career-ready workers. While this focus is necessary for economic growth, it often neglects an equally vital mission, preparing students to be thoughtful, engaged citizens. This imbalance risks leaving our communities and our democracy vulnerable to the consequences of civic disengagement, misinformation, and polarization. The Greek philosopher Plato in the Republic envisioned the philosopher king, a leader who seeks wisdom and truth to govern justly. While modern democracy does not rely on singular rulers, Plato's core idea that education cultivates thoughtful, informed leaders is timeless. And I look at one right there. Okay. Humanities and civics are the cornerstones of this preparation, giving students the tools to think critically, understand diverse perspectives, and advocate for a better society. To ensure this vision, we must strengthen civics education through vertical alignment from kindergarten through 12th grade. This approach builds a continuum of learning where students evolve from understanding fairness and community in elementary school to tackling real-world issues in high school. Furthermore, a 4th year of civics or social studies would offer students the time to delve into advanced topics such as government, social justice, and global interconnectedness, while actively engaging in projects and discussions that mirror democratic participation. The stakes are high. Without this foundation, students are less equipped to navigate the challenges of our increasingly complex world. With it, they become not just workers, but change makers, leaders, and community builders. We ask for your support at the local and state level, not only in improving policies like these, but also in providing the necessary resources, funding for teachers, training, inclusive materials, and experiential learning opportunities. Together, we can strengthen our education system to balance workforce readiness with the preparation of informed, civic-minded citizens. Our students are more than future employees. They are the fabric of our democracy. Let us invest in them, not just to sustain the economy, but to safeguard our shared values and community well-being. They can do this, paraphrase another great philosopher, George Carlin. Don't just teach your children to read, teach them to question what they read. Teach them to question everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Rex. I live at 16 Elm Avenue in Beverly. I am the president of the Gloucester Teachers Association, and I appreciate this opportunity to address you tonight. As we continue to navigate our district post-strike, I have many thoughts. First and foremost, educators recognize that the best and truly the only way we can serve our students is by repairing relationships, mending fences, working collaboratively with administration. That work is not always easy, but it is essential. We are now in budget season, and it's important to acknowledge that while the strike brought much needed attention to our concerns, it did not raise educators' salaries to the level we had hoped. We still have retired paraprofessionals awaiting retroactive pay that they rightfully earned, and we have seen an alarming number of staff leave, many for districts that offer significantly higher salaries than Gloucester. Special education caseloads continue to soar, and rapid changes in SPED that rely on leveraging existing staff, building capacity, and hiring additional staff are placing additional strain on our educators. Morale remains low, and I fear that by year's end, we will see even more educators leaving for districts with greener pastures. And yet, here I am, 3/4 of the way through my 32nd year, looking ahead to my 33rd year here in this district and as an educator, with a great anticipation. Why? Because I still believe in Gloucester. I believe in our students, I believe in our educators, and I believe in what this district could be. But if we're going to flip the script, we must take a hard look within. Leadership must work harder to show the appreciation, value, and respect that I know they hold for Gloucester educators. Morale cannot improve on its own. It must come from the top down. A kind word, a quick email of thanks or acknowledgement, or simply recognizing positive intentions can go further than you might think. Small but meaningful actions, such as using an email or video updates in place of faculty meetings, would be a welcome gesture for educators drowning in paperwork. Time is a precious gift. Recognizing when and where administration can give even a little of that time back to educators would mean so much to those struggling to manage heavy caseloads and complex classrooms. We must also bring back the joy of working in this district. Be generous, be thoughtful. With close to 400 educators here in Gloucester, imagine the impact if every one of us felt proud and eager to recruit colleagues to fill open and newly created positions. That kind of positive momentum would serve our entire community. During the strike, the mayor made it clear that there's not enough revenue to fund salary increases we proposed, but squeezing the balloon and taking one union to give to another is not sustainable. We need a bigger pie, and until we can create that bigger pie, we must find other ways to attract and retain highly qualified educators. And that first step is improving morale. This is not just a challenge, it's an opportunity, and one that I believe we can and should take together. Let's step out of the darkness and into the sunshine. Thank you.
That concludes oral communications. We will move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they would like to know?
Consent agenda.
Moving seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will move on to the superintendent's report.
Hello, everyone. Going to do a few things tonight. Updates around our schools. We have a budget update, and then we have an update from Amy Cam about so much of the work that our staff, educators, and clinical staff are doing for students. I'm hoping we can get through all of that. At some point, it gets too late. Maybe you might want to just consider one step at a time here. So let me share my presentation here. All right. As Stephanie, I'm sorry, could you just minimize the stripe there of the photos? So as we say in the College Public School, every day matters. Every day everybody belongs. Every student learns. And we get updated these photos. So great. So here, updates from our school, staffing update, budget update, and then update from on our College Public Schools priority number 3, strengthening social emotional learning and mental health support. So just a few things. Some of these have been already mentioned. There's a power of play. Thank you to GF, and also thank you very much. You'll see a bunch of yellow shirts in some of these photos. Those are all many high school students and other volunteers who made power of play possible. GF was leadership and organization, and then a lot of human power from old and young alike. Really appreciate the lacrosse baseball programs helping out and so many others as well. It was a really fun day. A lot of the school's leaders were there, teachers were there, staff were there, students were there, and then lots and lots of families enjoying an amazing time. There's Senator Bruce Tarr, who is reading the Joint Passage for Children at the Gloucester Read Across America. And also he read Pete the Cat and the Perfect Pizza Party there. Also, we had some other celebrity readers as well, Read Across America and West Parish also. MCAS is coming up. So you see here is the complex, complicated, and extensive schedule across all of our schools, grades 3 through 12, 3 through 10, 11, 12, really starting next week and going all deep into May, especially when you consider makeup starts. The high school all the way to May 20th and for May. Busy season these days, but also so many great things. Really appreciate the Amelia English teachers who have launched a partnership with Lane's Coven Theater Company, and they've done that and brought William Shakespeare to life. They brought the Bard to Cherry Street. So they did the teaching artists from Lane's Coven did 4 Romeo and Juliet classroom workshops for all the 8th graders, then performed the play on the O'Malley stage. And just want to appreciate the students who just will try a tremendous audience. They were really engaged with the performance. A lot of it has to do with the fact that they were learning about it in class. Then we were able to witness and experience the production. So really appreciate just their learning there and that sort of immersive approach to learning that Gloucester Education Foundation was funding, but our O'Malley English teachers and then also Lane's Coven have combined to put on at O'Malley. Really appreciate that. Learning the Ropes came to town. We're at West Parish and Plum Cove, which is jump rope enrichment there. And Beeman, sorry, Beeman was there. Great, yeah, awesome. I'm glad to do that. East Veterans too, sure. Some more Beeman updates. So students grade 2 to 5 are taking a STAR reading assessment this week and measuring their progress in their winter benchmark assessments. And they use that in part to readjust their intervention groups. And then also Beeman is really, really hopping with a lot of after school activities. The play rehearsals are underway, floor hockey, grade 3 reading buddies, which they do with GHS Honor Society students, which is another example of our older students supporting the younger students. And then math and reading tutoring for at-risk students as well, as district band and chorus practice for their young musicians. Plum Cove is having its March Madness book bracket, which is being led by fourth grade teacher Sarah Scafidi. Okay, Mrs. Scafidi has built that into an annual tradition. Fourth grade students have read books to other classes. We want students vote on the winning book of the year. Also, as they do that, visit Plum Cove this past week, Tuesday, and they're also doing their STAR assessment like all the other schools are as well. East Veterans Finding Nemo is going to happen this Friday and Saturday. And also got some extensive, got a big article in the Gloucester Daily Times talking about their work there and how it's led by Heidi Dallin and others. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to having some cameos from some of the staff in the production. Very exciting. Gloucester Preschool has a number of updates. So Kindred Gardens is partnering with us through the CPBI grant, which you've all heard about. And here's some Kindred Garden students, and we've been working with our staff, and our staff have been working with their teachers, developing social skills in the dollhouse, developing problem-solving skills, and also developing engineering skills with dinosaur cups. What you may notice is that the power of play is all about learning through play, and our preschool students and kindergartens also do a lot of learning through play, an essential part of lots of skills. It's problem-solving skills, social skills, even engineering skills. So I really appreciate our approach at the Gloucester Preschool and also their partnership with kindergartens. Another thing that the preschool has launched with the YMCA is the Cape Ann YMCA received a state grant to teach children how to swim. And they are trying it out with one of our preschool classes. So that happened just yesterday, I think it was. They're trying to, the statewide an effort to help more and more kids learn how to swim. And it's one of the top causes. It's dangerous and one of the top causes of death in children under 5 is drowning. So really appreciate the YMCA taking on this approach, and also our preschool classes, our preschool participating in it. But I really appreciate also the cooperation and support from our transportation department. We're using our buses to transport the kids back and forth. That is being paid for by the YMCA grant. And then also from the preschool, they're going to be on TV on Chronicle in coming weeks. So Backyard Growers and Gloucester Preschool are going to be filmed as part of a new story by Channel 5's Chronicle news show. Filming is going to happen on April 2nd, and then we'll let everyone broadcast this session. So looking forward to that. And then as you've heard from Lexi, James the Giant Peach is coming beginning of April 10th, 11th, 12th, and some more athletic accomplishments for our high school students. So as you know, a number of our track and field students, our athletes, went to the Nike Nationals in New York City and competed in relays and races. Congratulations to our girls short medley relay team, Allie Spencer, Maddie Jewell, Grace Castellucci, and Hope Castellucci for their performance. And also really pleased that we have 2 8th graders, Samantha Tucker and Addie Wood. They competed in the middle school national. A couple of the athletes said, I had a couple quotes. I really appreciate going, first of all, and competing at such a high level competition. And it was a quote, a couple of them. It was an honor to compete with such great athletes along with my team. Also, another athlete said it was amazing to be able to run on one of the fastest tracks in the nation. So, great experience for the athletes. We can pause there before I go to the staffing update. Any questions on the updates?
Can I add an update?
You are, of course.
There was the O'Malley Middle School band concert last week. So it was all the grades, and they did a fantastic job. And they also did, they closed with a piece where they were all walking around and playing. It was really great. Yeah, it was really. No, it was looser than that. They were just all over the stage. It was amazing.
Any other one? Anyone else? Any recognitions?
Last week, we had the pleasure of, some of us had the pleasure of, through the GEF, to visit some of our arts programs here at the high school. The CAD program and the Playworks, photography, and then drawing, artistic. And it was really something to see some of the talented students that we have in high school and the work that the teachers put into it. It's really an outstanding program, and just want to recognize it.
The band, speaking
We did.
really, and the citywide elementary band, yeah.
Again, a couple of great, we saw the practices, and it was really something to see, so really enjoyed it.
Did we all get those invites?
And then one thing we didn't add, but also want to acknowledge on the, and Lexi said this in the high school update, which is the National Honor Society, there were 52 new members, only doubling the size of its current size, and just really appreciate the work that Brandon Menery and the National Honor Society, advisory board puts on to have such a well-organized induction. And then also really appreciate the student leadership that it takes to pull that off. The students really run it quite well. They are all party MCs, all hosts, which is really another example of families coming together to celebrate some tremendous work, service, and leadership of their children, their high school students. So another excellent example of great work that our folks do. Okay, let me go on with it. So as folks know, once a month, typically the second meeting of the month, we do a staffing update. Folks understand where we are. Because it's been a challenging year on staffing, not only here in Gloucester, but across the Commonwealth. Things are really shifting in educational staffing and employment. And we're suffering some of the same challenges. So departures at the beginning of the school year, 12 teachers and 30 paraprofessionals. A real combination of reasons folks including retirement, moving away, moving to higher positions, higher salaries in other districts, leaving the education field, folks not wanting to take on changing responsibilities of their positions as things shift. We'll do some things differently, improve our work. We have a longer term pattern that we're really looking closely at of elementary special education district programs. SAC for extension, those programs both for teachers, but also paraprofessionals has been increasingly difficult over the years. That's not only just within a year, like this year, but also year to year. So that here are the departures at the beginning of the school year. We added March, so you can see January and February were very difficult months, November through January, February. It's got a little bit better here in March in terms of fewer departures. The other thing that has gone quite well just recently over the past month is starting a lot. Our hiring has improved and it's gotten stronger. At this point, for the first time this year, thankfully, East Veterans has a full complement of multilingual teachers. After having difficulty filling one of the positions in one of the departures, which we see none of these positions are related to special education, and adjustment counselor as well. And that's either filling open positions that have been open for a while or replacing folks who have left as well. So that shows good progress, thankfully, and really sort of filling some of the places quite better than have. You have openings right now, fewer openings we had in prior months. So I think we have I think it's 10 openings here right now. We had 16 last month's report. As you can see on that top line, just programs continue to be a challenge. Open departures for finding new staff, a couple specialists there in terms of services, QSP, ESPs as well. So again, doing better, but still, us and others, like it's different than in the past years, certainly. Gloucester is the only one that's experiencing that. These are just the retention numbers I've shown before. I just keep them in this report. But what they really show is that Gloucester teacher retention in prior years is above or similar to the state retention average. And then we're comparing it to our neighboring and Dart districts, again, sort of middle of the pack here, and closer to the top in terms of percentages in the bottom, and get above the state average. So just wanted to give folks an update as we do now every couple of meetings on how we're doing hiring. Last piece on this is a few couple of things. We're looking to expand the use of Indeed.com. That really is the sort of tool of record these days, as well as School Spring, but those can work in conjunction, and Indeed can help us sort of deepen or improve our use of School Spring. We update our human resources homepage to make it easier to identify and see what openings we have. As I've said before, we're participating in 2 job fairs in the coming months. The other piece we had, and just had a brief conversation with ETA President Rachel Rex and her team. Will continue to work on this with them, and I hope we continue to work on this with them, is how we can activate all our staff and also to reach out or help with recruitment. We are really well past the days of posting a position and dozens of folks show up in the applications. We're not having that, and very few districts are. And so the more we can recruit with local networks and friends and family of our own staff, that is always where we get really high quality folks. And so we want to see if we can do a better job of helping give people the tools to do that. Any questions on the staff?
Can you send this to us?
Yeah, it's in the packet.
Oh, I didn't see it with those packets today.
No, yeah.
Staff and update was?
Yes. Yeah.
It came later, earlier.
It should be in the home packet.
I see it.
Yeah. It's in there. Not. Okay, we're going to budget review. Great.
Keep going.
Keep going. So tonight, overview. So I'm gonna so people tune in on the budget process different times. I'm not gonna repeat everything that we did at either BNF a week ago or 2 weeks ago at school committee, but I will highlight some of the things that are changes, especially changes in staffing, okay? And that does mean that we're gonna go have a focus on special education. I'll give some of the context. We heard a lot of the state context tonight, really helpful. I'll that briefly, a bunch of where we are, where we're going. And then a focus on special education, because that's where the most significant changes are happening. We'll talk right about that. And then just share some of the top level numbers. So just again, want to repeat some of this. I know the school committee has heard this, but folks tune into the budget presentation and conversation at different times. So just want to always repeat, our schools and students are doing well. Every day there's tremendous learning and growing opportunities in our classroom school every day. It's you know, when so many of our folks are trying to do better and better, it's often difficult to see all the good things that are happening. And so I never want to stop highlighting those. We do that through in so many ways, but you know, just always want to make sure folks are hearing that and realizing that as hard as it is for our folks, folks are doing a great job and always trying to do better, which is deeply appreciated. We really have a good understanding of what the work is ahead, and I think have a good understanding of where we need to invest. We'll talk about that some tonight, both in FY26, but also longer term. And we're going to always continue to provide robust opportunities for a wide range of learners. It's one of the real treasures in Gloucester is this just a huge range of learners and skills and sort of stuff. And we're going to particularly continue to invest in building our support with special education and vulnerable learners. So we're about we, and I think this is I'll use the word we a lot, and I do that. And generally that means we're trying to work with a whole range of folks at different levels, at different times, in different ways, and getting input and sharing feedback. And that's small group conversation, big group conversation, it's day-to-day work, that's occasional work. But it really does take all of us to address the challenge we face. Schools are complicated places, but the best solutions are created when a variety of folks from a variety of perspectives are working on them. And we see that in our schools, and we see that across the district level as well, and something we'll continue to work on. And that really ties into the way we want to work, which is collaborative and inclusive. We always want to have a balanced approach to improvement, so acknowledge what we're doing well, but also being open and transparent about what our challenges are, and some of that we'll talk about tonight. And then clarity, support, and being accountable. So how do we more and more clearly define roles and responsibilities? Folks know what's expected of them, and what their work is. And we'll talk about that a little bit too, in relation to special education tonight too. Just some of the context, I won't go into this too much. We've heard about it tonight. I think people are really getting the sense that things are complicated and they're difficult and they aren't very rosy at the state level. That of course mimics what's happening at the local level. So there's lower growth in tax receipts in the city and state. We heard that tonight. Real challenges around Student Opportunity Act funding and circuit breaker. We all know that ESSER and ARPA have ended as well, and costs continue to go up. The city of Gloucester, the mayor has made a real strong commitment to our schools, and we're going to be able to add additions because of that. And we're getting our fair share, certainly, of the growth in city revenue, which looks like it's going to be in the neighborhood of $3.9 million. We're looking at an increase of 2.7, more than 3.75 million of that. The other thing that folks are probably hearing more and more about is layoffs are continuing in the North Shore and around Massachusetts. Manchester is looking at perhaps 20 layoffs, cutting 20 positions. Most recently, I heard North Andover looking at cutting 40 positions, and other North Shore communities are looking at overrides and trying to increase their tax levy. So, where we are adding some positions here, other folks certainly cannot. That's a little strength that we have this year in what we're able to do, but it's in very challenging circumstances. So, covered most of this, so I'll keep moving here. So just in terms of building our budget, we're always looking at the GPS plan for ongoing improvement. These are our priorities laid out that we continue to work on. We'll talk about where we're headed in the coming years, and we're also thinking about therefore where we invest in 2026. a lot of this also is coming from the conversations, comments, input, information from schools, from the school committee, from what folks tell us in many forums, public comment, but also throughout our schools, and what we know and it's happening in our schools. So that's really how we look at where we want to head in the future and also where we need to invest now. So of course, building the budget on our plan for ongoing improvement. There are 4 core priorities, not changed for 3 years now. And then where we're headed. So I'll talk about this a little bit. We want to continue to strengthen. I'll sort of go through these. So there are many things we'll continue to do. And these are just some examples. They're just like fantastic things that are going on in our schools. The Science Center, the Computer Science, Robotics, Advanced Placement Honors at GHS. Career Votes program, which is building and expanding. Great offerings at middle and high school. Our elementary schools are warm and welcoming. They've got small class sizes, okay? So does the middle school, actually. We've got great and strong and growing arts and performing arts programs. Really, our professional levels getting stronger and stronger and more focused on staff needs. And we have ongoing efforts to strengthen curriculum and instruction on all of our schools. Those are things that all continue, and they're really strong and always getting better. We want to continue to strengthen instruction, student learning and achievement, and also deepen student belonging, in so many ways every single day. And then really, some of the shifts we're looking at is stronger special education practices. And that's across the board: assessment, evaluation, staff support, revision, instruction programs. I'll talk about tonight how we're adding some positions and reallocating positions to do this better. This is on a number of levels. I'll get into more detail in a moment. The other area we're really thinking hard about is supporting vulnerable learners. The one thing that's come through in conversations and meetings and listening and learning from folks is that our folks really need to, many of our folks, a greater understanding among all staff about teaching students who are vulnerable. And what it means to be those students and go through school today, and what it means to support them. And what I mean by that, I mean students who have experienced trauma, multilingual learners, maybe on the autism spectrum, maybe have emotional and behavioral needs. These are things that our staff need to and want to learn more about. So one example of that recently was the middle school during a half day. One of our staff members, Sarah Carter, was helping the middle school staff learn more about autism spectrum and what those students experience, and also some strategies on helping support them. Just as sort of an overview. But it's that, or whether it's trauma or it's multilingual learners, areas we had professional development on recently in those areas to do more of that to support our learners and help our staff support those students. So another piece that we've heard a lot about is just better support for students with disruptive behaviors. We really want to be clear that that's a combination of pieces here. There isn't just one approach or one thing that fits that. And that means the academic support designed for specific student needs to make sure we know students who are triggered academically or because they face academic challenge, how to support them. That means strengthening our inclusion program and co-teaching. That's more training for teachers and paraprofessionals and clinical staff and working with students who are vulnerable or may have emotional behavioral needs that are out of the, sort of beyond the norm. That's working on described programs. And that's also in some of our schools have launched recently. Now we have in all our schools our behavior support teams learning from what they're doing, and what they're suggesting and recommending in terms of professional development, but also really clear behavior support plans, and also really clear behavior expectations for students and what happens among staff and students don't meet those expectations. So it's a lot of levels we continue to work on this. We'll expand programming and opportunities for O'Malley and GHS students in the future. This is longer term. Expand STEM coding classes at O'Malley, expand language instruction at O'Malley as well. Something we're considering. CBT opportunities and paths to GHS. It's another area we're looking at and working on right now. And also at GHS, expanding visual and performing arts offerings. And these are things happening. Some of these are happening now. CBT is. Others are in the future. That's sort of where we're headed. Let me move on to where we're going to invest in FY 2026. This is where we start talking about changes that are going to be happening next year. Special education, curriculum and operational resources, and then also on grants. So in terms of special education, and this is work that's been ongoing and also is new. And so it's been challenging, and we haven't yet done a good enough job on making sure everyone needs to know everyone knows what they need to know. And that's hard to do when you have multiple schools, that sort of thing. And I realize, and I want to acknowledge that that folks have a lot of questions, and that's understandable. Really looking at how we do a much more coordinated approach on special education, because that's really what's going to help all of our students. And the sort of the pieces, the components of the coordinated approach are inclusion, services, and then programs. So what we might include is that general education, special education teachers working together inside the classroom. So we're pushing into classrooms and being able, and through that, with support of teachers and paraprofessionals, able to provide additional time of support for students. In order to do inclusion and co-teaching well, really launch, I should say, it requires some additional staff, which I'll talk about in a moment. It also requires thinking through the process of revising IEPs as well. So that's work that also is starting to get underway. I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about how we're going to take some initial steps on inclusion and co-teaching. Services, what we know is that in addition to inclusion and getting support, some students with disabilities need additional services. That can be reading, specialized reading instruction. That could be occupational therapy or speech therapy. It could also be behaviors. So those are areas we continue to invest in and build over time. Their programs need a lot more clarity, and we also have to make sure we have all these programs across the spectrum, across the continuum K through 12 and up to 22 years old. So those are severe autism. In our elementary grades, those happen at West Parish. Autism with flex and inclusion. So the idea that students have a home base and a substantially separate autism class serving autism needs at ACE veterans, but then as they're able to, they flex into the classroom when they can do it in certain times, starting in a very limited way. Language-based class, which we have, or program, which we have these veterans in the upper elementary, but we need to, and we have it in O'Malley, but we need to strengthen it in O'Malley and also strengthen further as veterans. Language Skills and Learning Center. At this point, we only have an upper elementary program at West Parish. So we may be, and now we're going to be developing one at Bailey, because we don't have that at this point. And life skills is something that is sort of more of a something we may need to build, but don't at this point. Those are for more low cognition students with splintered skills, correct? Significant needs. Yeah. And that's a type of program that we have built if we have the need, if we have students who fit that program. But we don't really. And then emotional behavioral program, this is a really important need across the board, especially K through 8 for us. And I'll describe how we're strengthening and building further our emotional behavioral programs, both at elementary, lower elementary, upper elementary, and middle school as well. But those together are really what will provide better service support for our students. And help our teachers provide that more complete and thorough support. One piece or another done well isn't sufficient. And this is why, while it's challenging, we really want to build all of them together, but do it in steps. Okay? So start slowly, but not just do one, not just do inclusion, but make progress in all areas, in all three of these areas. I'll describe that more in a moment. So, in terms of FY26, we're going to be making initial steps in all three of these areas: K inclusion program, K-5 reading support, and starting to describe programs K-8. Initial steps in all of those. If we try to do all of it all at once, it would not work. Okay, but I'll describe how we do some of it in a few places. essentially, on the initial steps on K-8 inclusion, in order to do this well, we do need to add staff in the highest need areas. Okay? We'd be aiming for ultimately at our elementary schools to have a classroom teacher, special education teacher, per 2 grades. Because it's large, has more classes, and at East Veterans, it'd be 1 special education teacher per grade. That's what at this point we anticipate it'll take. May take more, okay? And on top of that, then you would have a classroom, a special education paraprofessional, 1 at each grade level for all the schools. Okay? In order to do that, we need to add in a few places for our first steps next year. What we anticipate is that this will get going at 1 grade, most likely at East Veterans, maybe 2. Okay, hopefully 2, maybe just 1, and 2 grades at the other elementary schools. Okay. It's important we do training for folks. It's important that we start well, we start slowly. It's important that we have success in the beginning so people understand how to do it and learn from each other. Okay. And so we're trying to take a measured approach, take some initial steps. In order to do that, we do need to add some staff. This is what we're doing, adding a special education teacher at East Veterans, classroom paraprofessional at East Veterans, 2 classroom paraprofessionals at West Parish, a classroom paraprofessional at Beeman. We also add some special education capacity at Plum Cove through reallocation and consolidation of the program leader with Beeman. Let me explain that. Right now, Plum Cove has 3 special education teachers, 1 full-time as a full student load, okay, which directly students for full position, and the other 2, they're all fantastic educators, by the way. The other 2 split time between servicing students and taking a program leader position, program leader responsibilities. Okay, because each of those 2 program leaders, they have sort of about half time workload for directly serving students. That's ultimately about, and these aren't exact percentages, about 2 people, 2 FTE equivalent. That can provide service to students, okay, and then about 1.0 of those people doing the program leader support. By combining the program leader at Plum Cove and Beeman, okay, what Plum Cove will have next year is 3 full-time special educators, all of whom can provide direct service to students. Okay. So that will help the teacher capacity in terms of providing special education instruction to students by about the equivalent capacity of one special education teacher. That's important because of some change I'll talk about later, because you see this word reallocation here. We are reallocating some staff from lower needs areas to higher needs areas. Okay. We can't add all the staff that we want to next year. Not possible with the budget situation we're facing. Okay. So do have to make some tough choices in reallocating some resources and staff. So let me just pause there, see if there are any questions for me or more important, Mike Jarvis, just on the initial steps on K-8. Good teaching.
That's it. It's K-8, it doesn't have pre-K in here. Is that because that's already existing?
It's already in the program.
Okay.
Good. You said Plum Cove, then there's going to be 3 SE leaders at Plum Cove, correct?
3 special education teachers at Plum Cove. Yeah, 3.0, yeah. And then and focused exclusively on support, teaching students, servicing students. Yeah, because right now they have essentially 2.0 FTE, servicing students.
I shouldn't ask this question because it's described to me 10 times, but I'm running anyway. Co-teaching, Mike, if you could, just give me a 10,000-foot view of co-teaching in a minute synopsis would be perfect.
Sure. So it's it's under the umbrella of inclusion, right? So what it means is that the services, specially designed instruction, evidence-based practices goes to the child or children in the general ed setting. Okay, so that can take the shape of co-teaching, take the shape of consultation with a special education teacher and a general education teacher. The most robust delivery of that, and sometimes most complex, is the co-teaching model. So what it says, instead of pulling kids out of the general ed class to receive special ed services, services go to the child. General education classroom. co-teaching is one model of inclusion.
Okay.
Just so Plum Cove is the smallest of our elementary schools. They would have 3 full-time educators. So how many does West Parish or Beaman have?
West Parish, I mean, we're moving towards 1 per grade.
Okay.
One per 2 grades. 2 grades, yeah. Right. So yeah, so 1 per 2 grade for Beaman, and West Parish, okay. Plum Cove will be there. Okay, and I believe Beaman will be there. Okay, and West Parish, I think will be there. I'm not quite sure.
I'm just questioning because Plum Cove is the smallest.
Yeah.
By a lot, I think. But that still makes sense. I mean, you know, just from a student to teacher ratio. You know, West Parish and Beaman are like better.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how that worked.
So the size of the school will be commensurate with the education ratio, right? So I think West Parish has 4, if I remember correctly, Chad has. We're investing in stats to have 5 for next year. So because it's a larger school. So to roll this out by 1 grade level, it could be easy.
So they're not all 3.
Right, we would be doing all 3 at the same time.
No. I'm saying it's not 3 teachers per school.
Right.
Okay, that's what I thought you said, Ben.
Oh, I see.
So it is a different number
It
based on the
is.
size of the school.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's.
He did say.
He did, yeah.
It's not.
3 at Plum Cove, right, but
Yes.
that's the smallest, so
Right.
there would be more at bigger
That's correct.
schools.
Yes, especially not. And that's what I.
And being in the center.
Well, so let me. Not exactly. We are at this point planning for 3 school, and then we'll build as we need to.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah.
Right, these vets.
You have to know. So one of the challenges at Plum Cove is we're actually reducing them by 4 paraprofessionals at the same time. Okay, we're trying to balance this out.
I see.
Okay, and we can't balance it out. It gets where we want it all in 1 year. Okay, so you're right that that we're expecting to have, that's where we're aiming right now at this point. And we'll have to see, you know, for example, it also may mean that we need additional paras in some of the grades, okay, as well. You know, the work I should be careful, we here, okay?
Right.
The work that is now beginning to happen at the schools is that principals and the program leader, or it could be another special education teacher who helps the principal with the planning and scheduling, also student placement. There's also like student placement scheduling, about where are you putting students in which classroom and how many classrooms, okay? And then what you're able to do, because in some ways, even though Plum Cove is smaller, you still may be dividing or placing education students in the same classes as you might at Beaman or West Parish. Okay, because although it's a smaller school, that what comes with it often is lack of flexibility in the staffing and scheduling.
I see. Okay.
So you get to a minimum amount, you can't go below that in terms of staffing and special education. Okay. But that's also, it's a great question because as we do this, year by year, we'll see where we need to adjust, staffing particularly, based on student need, and also how it's going.
And just one other thing, which may not be something you can answer now, like I know we lost people when we had to reduce staff last
20
year.
positions, right? Yeah.
Right, and I know I know at least one of them was a special education teacher.
Yeah.
Are we approaching those people to try to bring them back, or is that just we have to see if they apply for the job? When we get to that budget, if that's the way. I'm just curious.
I haven't thought about that. Okay. I'm sure some. I know principals are okay. Like, I know one example where that's going to definitely happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because I haven't talked with them about it.
Okay.
But yeah.
I just know they were sorting this.
Yeah. There's some folks that definitely. I mean, there were lots of folks who That's just the co-teaching and inclusion rather. I think that was the circle.
Yes,
Okay.
more available, but that's all right.
The diamond is sort of services. We're talking about here strengthening special education services, right? So again, the steps on K-5 reading instructions. Okay, so at East Veterans and West Parish, okay, two of the schools with the highest level of special education need, we're going to be adding a special education reading teacher. What that does, and this will be the teacher who's working with special education students in specialized reading instruction, that also helps reduce the load of the other special education teachers. We're trying to increase capacity, or they reduce load, right? And then in terms of additional steps on strengthening, excuse me, K-8 district programs. This year we piloted a lower elementary emotional behavioral program at West Parish, and we piloted an upper elementary emotional behavioral program at Beaman. Okay, started small, like we're doing with co-teaching, and now we're going to have both of those at Beaman, so there's a continuation. Okay, just like we have severe autism program, lower elementary, upper elementary at West Parish, we do the same thing with the emotional behavioral program at Beaman. Okay. That will help some of our neediest students and make sure that we can support them in district instead of going out of district. We'll start small in both those programs as we have this year. But one of the key things there is in talking to districts around the North Shore, the growth in emotional behavioral needs, emotional behavioral disabilities in elementary is probably one of the highest growth areas. So it really makes sense for us at this point to grow this program. And then part of that, and then the other piece is, and we know this is really the case, is strengthening the emotional behavioral support and program at middle school. We're going to reallocate one of the teachers to have an additional teacher in the emotional behavioral program at middle school, and also build a middle school language skills program. And that's really for, we know students that are moving up to 5th grade and 6th grade, who are in that program, language skills program at elementary, and will need that support program, a substantially separate program at middle school.
When you say language skills, I'm assuming you mean like language-based learning.
Yeah, very similar. So it's slightly different cognitive profile and academic profile. So it's nuanced a little bit. Different groupings of kids, but the instruction is very close.
But are we, I mean, just this, and I am not someone who knows a lot about this, but are we talking like dyslexia and?
So it could be part of that kind of profile.
Okay.
Yes, but it just on the clinical end, they're just a little bit nuanced profiles. So therefore the groupings of kids would be appropriate to be separate from each other.
Different language skills will be a lower cognition level, maybe some more significant needs in this program.
This is the continuation of the program that's at West Parish that is often called the Learning Center, but it's also like it's a language skill, so it's a continuation for those. I'm just asking because the term language skills for the uninitiated is a little confusing.
Yeah. So then like with Learning Center too, just the same, right? So that could be convoluted too. Right. So it's very similar to a language base. So it's more of a placeholder.
Okay.
So, and then the other piece here is I've heard in a variety of ways from some folks on the school level, both teachers and administrators, just the need for support. So staff, but also students, and also families. So particularly at West Parish, where there are really 3 substantial separate programs, really building up support at the administration level for special education. And that's in the form of assistant principals, for special education. Okay, so that person will really work very closely with the programs and with program students and their families. Okay, and then special education administrator at O'Malley as well. Again, a higher level of support that can come from an administrator who's focused on supporting staff, but we're also students and families. Both of these positions are conversions of existing program leaders don't currently have this base load. By making them administrators, they'll have greater responsibility, greater flexibility in terms of their work, what they do, and it's greater authority to work with parents and families. And this sort of IEP. So that'll expand the level of support for teachers and students and families there. And then the programs and inclusion are quite strong. I mean, and co-teaching are quite strong. Not complete as Gloucester High, but quite strong. So the one area we're going to focus on next year for high school is we have a job coach position that works with our students with life skills in addition and also at the gap. We're going to increase that position 0.4 FTE to full time. A crucial program and one that's done very well right now in terms of the job coach, in terms of helping the students get opportunities, work opportunities now, and then also we set them up for work opportunities after they complete high school. So again, I just do want to emphasize that we have not done a good enough job of really communicating the ins and outs of this as we go along, and part of that is because the budget process and the planning process aren't quite aligned. In a different world, we have the planning and talking through, and then have the budget process. This year they're on top of each other. So I do appreciate it's causing consternation. What Mike is doing now, the reason is today, he's meeting with special education staff, especially the elementary schools, regularly. We had a great meeting with Rachel Rex, Melissa Desmond, Kathy Durante, Marianne Aiello, just yesterday. Talked through this with them. Really helpful on many levels on that. Everything from how do we deal with the jobs that are being reallocated, the positions that are being reallocated, to just talking through the approaches and getting just good input and also good understanding about the effort that we're trying to do over the long term. And we'll do more and more of that, both at the principal level, but also the staff level. Our special education program leaders at the elementary school are really crucial to this, and also helping them be able to answer questions and support their staff too. So these pieces are work in progress, definitely, but do want to acknowledge that it is hard for folks to think and anticipate and know what's coming. It's also hard. It's also a challenge because there's a whole range of reactions and responses as well, and that's understandable. But just continue to make the effort to make sure folks get a lot of training in May, more trainings in spring and fall. But do want to just reiterate that we feel like we're taking important steps, responding to so much of what we heard, seen, experienced over the past couple of years on this, especially coming out of last year's budget cuts, and need to make some important changes and shifts, but also understand that has a real impact on how folks do their work and the support they need, and it's always challenging. So, any questions on that before we go further?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
I mean, I know so we talked a lot about where we want to be as a district, like kids and learning. I appreciate the balancing act, both with planning while we're trying to do a budget, because that hasn't been there long enough for this work to actually have been done prior to this budget. So right. I appreciate the attention and the sense of urgency, but also the implementation on initial steps to kind of start planning and see what works. Well, lay the groundwork, like we put in curriculum and pilot some of it so that others can learn from the successes of before. So I appreciate that consistent approach in this way, not only because I think it's good practice, but because we have financial constraints as well. But we're still putting forward changes that will help.
Thank you. One thing I didn't share, we need to, because it's a crucial piece of the reallocation, which you're talking about right now, is the shifts that will happen in order to allow some of the position additions. I mentioned some of these, but most importantly, we want to talk about reallocating 4 paraprofessional positions from Plumco, which I mentioned, and 2 from preschool. Okay. 2 of the classroom alternative pair positions at at Beaman West Parish is better than Wheeling. Okay, so those are real shifts, okay, and understanding like we are definitely making a conscious, difficult decision to reallocate from, towards schools that have higher needs right now. Okay, again, not easy to do that. It's a difficult choice to make. We clearly understand it makes impacts on those schools, and we'll continue to work with their folks to make sure those impacts are minimized. It does mean that those schools will be looking at different ways of scheduling and staffing folks, and folks, way of working will be a little bit different than the past. Okay, and that's not easy and complicated, but we'll work with their leaders and their staff to understand what the end is.
Can I ask a question? I just want to acknowledge also that Andrea Perron is on.
Yeah.
With us.
We discussed this at ENF last week, but since then today, we heard concerns during public comment about the preschool. So I'm viewing this a little bit differently, knowing that that concern is out there, and just want to know. I mean, you don't have to have an answer because clearly this is just something that happened tonight. Do you share in those concerns? Are those concerns able to be addressed that we heard earlier? Like, just think about that.
Yeah, no,
because that's what I'm thinking right now.
We're definitely, I mean, always, again, I don't want to like minimize, like these are, like I said, like these are really tough decisions, and they're not easy decisions. And what I mean is not easy. They're not easy for the folks that are impacted.
But it almost sounds like the preschool can't function. So that's where I just want to make sure that that's not where we're at.
We're confident the preschool can function. Okay. That's not, I don't say that lightly or easily. Okay. Mike can maybe add some more to this, but it will require changes in how the preschool operates, the staff operate, and how they schedule things, okay, how they schedule staff and how they utilize staff. Two paraprofessionals and one teacher, in a grade class is not. It's not the norm. It's a lot. Okay, it's not. Maybe it's a lot. It's great staffing. Okay, it's great staffing. Okay, and it isn't as common as we might like to think it is. Okay, but again, that it doesn't mean it. I'm not trying to say anything easy. Nothing easy in public schools. Okay, nothing. But it can be done, and support them.
Yeah, so it's a huge challenge because these are developmental skills, right? And that's labor intensive. For everyday aspect. So it's hard to just say, yeah, teacher, one para is enough, or two paras, or I guess is enough. It's not just a qualitative or quantitative look at this, it's a qualitative part because you have a range of needs. So I think it's important for us to look at anticipated range of needs that we have, and we're gonna have unknowns too that come in throughout the school year, and we might have to shift. We might have to actually shift given what those demands are. So I think we take our best approach, given the circumstances that we're in, and have some flexibility with where we need to go with a high level of need that could be anticipated in the fall or as the winter progresses.
And that was my question: is there going to be flexibility built into this budget?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to think that through. Okay. I think that because they're just variables you can't control,
right?
And so we have to make our best effort to do that, to try to account for it. It's not easy work.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then we finish these again. We have important through. We talked about that, but it's still these are new people, so I don't want to go too quickly on them. We'll be reallocating a teacher and RBT from West Parish, and then piloted the emotional equity program over to Beaman. Okay, that's not there's no change in cost there, just in location really. We are reducing one paraprofessional position preschool. That is 3 paraprofessionals at the preschool. I mentioned consolidating program leader positions at Beaman and Plum Cove, and then upgrading the program leader positions at West Parish. So those are shifts and changes, okay, which are a combination of new hires, but also reallocation or change in role, that sort of stuff, or moving folks from one building to another, the program in that case. All parts and pieces of a regional approach to managing municipal budget, and the school budget. You know, really any organization looks at those pieces, you know, where you need to add positions, the highest need, where you can move folks or reallocate positions or resources, and where you have to consolidate. You know, the typical tools that we have. I feel like we're using, make some difficult choices, but making some pretty strategic choices.
So, just a specific question, obviously the Beaman building is an old building without extra space. West Parish is a new building so moving a program from West Parish to Beaman, I mean, I'm sure you looked for space, but
So yes.
All right, so I think so largely I'd like to answer this by saying, so it's students first. And I think what Jody did, so building principal, so she's actually reallocated the office.
So there's a bunch of moves that happen,
yeah,
including that. It's one part of multiple moves.
And so she's taking that on, that same kind of approach is the same. And then what that does, it prevents.
Her office is not a classroom. Okay. No, she, let me say it this way. There are a bunch of moves that are happening that Jody, you know, and your staff have figured out. Okay. What part of that domino effect includes her moving her own office? She's willing to move her own office to make sure this works at the school. So yes, it's tight, and they're going to be having another classroom building program.
So what it means by doing this and have this vertical alignment in one building, we're not going to have to move kids that are in the program midstream through elementary school, which would be disruptive.
right, no, it makes sense, I'm just.
So it's student first.
You don't know this about me, but that's the building I know the best,
Okay.
and so it's just a very surprising given the sort of restrictions of that.
Yeah.
And like so many folks in our district, the public schools, you know, even is figuring out a way led by Mr. Jody to make it work. And part of that is the need, and really acknowledge the need, to relieve some of the pressure at West Parish with common programs. So again, lots of tough choices. Folks may be really difficult in lots of ways.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to talk about a very important new approach to the budget planning we have here, which is looking at longer term. And for the first time since I've been here, we are looking at a longer term budget planning. You have with you in the packet and also hand out the initial budget report. So this. Right. And you turn to page 3, show already screen here.
I don't think I got
So what I'm showing here is the longer term sort of budget needs. Okay, and this is designed as a roadmap, not cut in stone, to really lay out all the positions and areas that we want to invest in the coming years. How many years? This isn't 2 years, this isn't 3 years beyond that. What this allows, and what I'm showing on the screen now, it starts with elementary. There are inclusion program teachers, and then district-wide programs. And then we get into middle school programs, adjustment counselor, intervention teachers, world language teachers, STEM and coding specialists, things I've talked about tonight. I mentioned STEM and coding, I mentioned world language, okay. We mentioned district-based programs at the middle school, growing those. At the high school, additional visual and fine arts. Those are programs that also include business and technology, that are some of the most highly subscribed programs. Academic support, intervention at the high school rather, medical assisting and all the motives, these that are grant funded, okay. You can see it's very comprehensive, a lot of things on our IT needs, okay. Formula Academy, Vogue Tech, infrastructure, transportation, capital projects, down here towards the end are the consolidation reallocations we're making this year and the savings, okay? All right, so it's really looking forward, looking into the future about sort of our comprehensive needs and where we stand today. Okay, that's the blue column. The green column are the areas we're able to put into the budget this year. And of course, yellow is the balance or the remaining. Okay, so it shows you where we have to go full time of longer term, the steps and actions we're able to make this year, change them and we'll make this year, and then what we still have to do. Okay, the numbers are important; they add up, and the numbers aren't cut in stone. And there's some important caveats about the numbers. So all told, $7 million. This is you got to take it out with a grain of salt. We're making a $2.725 million investment towards that for this year. Okay, which leaves us about $4.3 million left to continue to add over in the coming years. Okay, very importantly, in the yellow column, we don't include our annual salary and other contractual increases. Okay, so a big chunk, obviously, every year of our budget are our healthcare contractual increases and salary increases. Okay, that $4.2 million number doesn't include those. It just includes sort of additions. Okay, but the point here isn't really what we're missing. It's that we have sort of a roadmap of where we want to go, what we're going to need in the years to come, and also significant investment this year towards that. The green and the blue do include this year's increases on contractual expenditures, including salary, healthcare, and direct services.
Just a quick question for you, Ben. How long is, what's the time frame on this? So you got FY26 not included at this time. So that 4.279, that's spread out over unknown time.
Yeah, I can't begin to anticipate that just because, as you heard, there's so many variables on this year's budget at the state and federal levels to anticipate what that growth would be. A few years ago, we may have said it'll take a couple of years.
Right.
But at this point, it'll take 3, 4, 5. Right. It's hard to know, honestly. But I think the value in it is for planning purposes, but also directional purposes. Those changes are aligned with the work we're trying to do this year, but also our plan for ongoing improvement. And also those things may change. The programming needs or push at the high school. While just in talking with James Cook and some of the work he knows and needs, is around finding performing arts and finding performing arts. But that could change in a couple of years. So it's flexible, but at this point gives us direction and gives us sort of a universe of what's to come. Yes. Then you'll see the other, the rest of, in terms of just the rest of the presentation tonight, but also the rest of the budget book. It's all the specifics on offsets, revenue, grants. What's still to come is the full budget book with all the positions. It came from last year and this year, but this gives you and the public, lots of detail on all the components of our budget and where are the planning. And that's for you to look at and peruse. Let me just show the public and all of you one last part, finish up the presentation here. And just the numbers tonight, we showed this before, we showed again, looking for recommending $2.725 million increase. That's a $5.3% increase. You can see that's the largest increase of any year except for FY 24. These are the changes in terms of just some of the numbers here. So education tuition increases, a change in the budget, not a change in the cost. It's a decrease in the budget, in the operating budget. But as we show you, we'll continue to show you, there's an increase in the tuition costs, okay? Then you see contractual obligations. So $1.5 million across the board for all salary increase and adjustments. $370,000 for employee benefit increases, that includes health and retirement insurance. Transportation lease payments are coming off of the ESSER, ARPA grants, the operating budget. We have curriculum materials in terms of maintaining building investments in our capacity. So these are for additions here on the bottom. New additions is curriculum materials and Chromebooks. Other supplies, those are our annual renewals of all curriculum supplies. Okay, that's both rules and software licensing. Okay, $400,000. Again, those are things that are coming off of ESSER and ARPA grants, and then our positions, special education programs and services by far and away the highest concentration of that. These are the things we talked about tonight. Those positions, those changes. So that those add up. That's a summary of the total budget increase of $2.725 million. From here, there's a summary of the 4 major categories of expenditures. No salary and benefits takes up by 85% of our budget. It's very common across any municipal organization, particularly schools. Education, transportation services take another $5.2 million or 10% of the budget. And that leaves repairs, maintenance, supply, materials for the last 5%. $3.7 million. From here, we finalize the budget book with the full detail, make that available to the committee and the public. The BNF subcommittee reviews the budget book. That'll be available to the community and the BNF the community that week. The BNF subcommittee the Friday before. The full committee Friday before. And then the school committee will vote on the public hearing budget on April 30th. And the public hearing will be May 14th. And here's the complete schedule of budget calendar. So the committee is aiming for final vote on your budget on May 28th to send it to the city council and mayor. In late June for the final adoption.
Feeling, Amy.
It's up to me and you.
Yes, if you want. We'll leave it up to you.
We leave it to you. You either have to come the second night or next time.
Okay. Need a stretch break? Okay. Okay, so thank you for having me, and I want to thank the clinical staff, the educators I work with every day who support kids. You all have been really supportive of this, and I'm gonna just focus today on a little bit of the highlights. I'm gonna skip some slides so we can get out of here, and I'll just give you a brief overview of the highlights of the district plan and just some things that we're working on moving forward. So this is the 3rd year in the district plan. So we're going to be developing the next 3 years very shortly. This is the future state we're working on. And basically the main point of this is that it's a collaboration with families and community partners that we have to work together to support our kids' mental health and develop social emotional learning skills, which is the 5 core competencies: self-regulation, self-management, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, decision-making, and relationship skills. So those are the 4 core competencies that we look for. And so the last 3 years, it's been really clear that we have to keep focusing on skills to develop with our students and skills for our staff. The kids, as you've heard tonight, I don't like to think of it as a mental health crisis. That immobilizes me. I like to think of how we can help each child and each staff member support kids. And I also don't like the message that sends like the kids are in a crisis. It pathologizes it. So I really look at it as building systems that support and developing these skills that they need. So this is the 4 areas of the strengthening social emotional learning and mental health support in the district plan. I'm gonna go quickly through this, and you've heard most of this. The goal 1, no, I'm thinking going that quickly. Okay, so goal 1 is really looking at multi-tiered systems of support. As you remember, tier 1 is universal. What we're teaching explicitly to all children. It's the Trails curriculum. It's Wayside, Wayfinder advisory in the middle school. It's like a lot of different things, and I'll go through that a little bit. Tier 2 is targeted intervention. And that's like the kids that we use a lot of the universal screening to identify kids that need more targeted intervention. And we do that often in group settings, time limited, 7 sessions. And oftentimes we can contract through my grants with outside providers, so it's not falling on all of our staff. The third part of the plan is on training and supporting clinical staff and educators on skill building and support, and I'll go through that more. And the 4th is really recognizing our kids have complex needs, some of them, and we can't work in isolation. We definitely need to leverage our community partners, look at the gaps in services, and I write a lot of grants. I have like 5 right now that really fund a lot of almost everything that you're gonna hear tonight. So the next one. So this is prior to tier 1. You've heard me talk about it before. It's foundational. We need the foundations of a school culture and climate where kids have a sense of belonging, feel safe, and thrive. So we look at different data points. I'm gonna not go through a lot of this, but I just want to focus on like the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We're working to get you a presentation on the latest one, which was in 2024. But like that data doesn't really give us like what it means. So there was some concerning data on LGBTQ subgroups of students in the 2022 YRBS around mental health. And so James and I did focus groups, and they came up with an anonymous incident reporting form. So that's just like one example. So they said if something happens in class, they don't want to get up to report it, or if they witness something. So they developed that. Grant Harris, I want to give him kudos. He operationalized it. And in 1 year, we've gotten 18 reports, which is a lot. We never got, like when it was hard copy and not anonymous, we didn't get as many. So and that was kid like driven. Right now, I'm just so proud of the kids. So there's a part on that. We got the hate crime prevention grant 3 years, and bias incidences is something that we need to track. So we had put it on, Grant had put it on the incident reporting form, and no one has ever logged that as a category. And then we realized like no one knows what that means. So I approached the racial equity team at the high school and the advisors, and I said, can you take this model and create something where it teaches about bias incidences? And so they did that, and Grant and I and James worked on it today. And I think and they're going to teach it in all of the, like in different classes, and also go to the middle school and work with it, No Place for Hate. So that's just an example of how we use the data to really help drive practice.
and I won't go through any more of this. This is. So that was all foundational. This is tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1, our trails SEL program that we use in the district is consistently implemented in West Parish and East Bats. In Beeman, it's K-2. At O'Malley, as you heard from Noam Graham, GEF funded 6th grade. And then my thinking has shifted. When I first developed this plan, I thought we need SEL tier 1 in every grade, but now I'm realizing that I'm rethinking that and thinking like tier 2 in 7th, 8th, and high school. That's what needs to happen. They should have the skills and the knowledge reinforced throughout their elementary, and then we do more targeted interventions at the high school and the later middle school. So these groups that we are tier 2 are being done at O'Malley, GHS, and Beeman is implementing tier 2. It's 7 weeks, and sometimes we contract. This year I'm contracting JRI. Last year it was Leahy. The year before that was JRI. Okay, next. Okay, so I'm really proud of this. So teen mental health first aid is an evidence-based like national program. It's like hugely, I think it was Michelle Obama who started it, but so basically it's a 6-module mental health literacy, how to recognize a mental health challenge in yourself or a friend. And then it teaches you the skills to respond, but not just respond, get them to a trusted adult. So they work on the algae first part of this year. We piloted it in the 9th grade, and we relied on outside partners who were trained, because it's extensive training to be an instructor, to come in and teach our kids. Since then, we've trained 7 people, so now we can sustain it ourselves. We have bilingual capacity. Vanessa Lindbergh was trained. A paraprofessional, Jess Salisi, who's amazing in our Anchor program, was trained. Kelly Carvalho. There's a lot of people trained. So now we're sustainable. So we're going to be doing that in all the 9th grades, health classes. Okay, next. And that's a tier 1. That's really easy. Okay, so this is the tier 2. This is developing early ways. So when I took this job and when I did this job, like at the high school for a million years, like we were living in like crisis reactive mode. So my goal was to get less reactive, more proactive, and identify kids before they were in a crisis. So universal screenings is what we started to do a couple of years ago. We do the GAD 7, which is a 7, I have them all here, but 7-question anxiety scale, a CRAFT, which is a substance use and nicotine and vaping screening, and we do the BSAD. Like, I cannot believe they named a depression scale that, but they did, and that's it's like really unfortunate, but that is done in our 7th, 8th, and 9th grade health classes in the Signs of Suicide evidence-based DPH program that we run. So we run BSAD in the health classes. We run the other ones in online. 7th grade for O'Malley, and all of the high school gets it in their homeroom, and they can choose to take it or not. You don't force it.
High school, all grades?
All grades for the high school. And then you can go to the next one. So this is, I just went through this, let's go. Okay, so this is the GAD results for the high school. And I'm just gonna right here say basically that the response protocol I got feedback that we weren't as clear as we needed to be with parents and or the kids. So we were really clear on the passive consent, and we were really clear when we posted it that if they scored moderate to severe, we would be meeting with them individually and then letting a parent know and coming up with a support plan if necessary. I mean, sometimes there's 7 questions. They're not like, you know, we're not diagnosing them. And it could be that someone was just worried about a test and like said yes to everything. Like, so you really have to like have that individual meeting to see what, you know, what they need. But so the options include, once we screen someone as like maybe needing support and an individual like follow-up, there's indication that they want more support. They're offered either more in-school support, they're offered out-of-school referral, or we run those tier 2 trail groups. So they get that offering. We also have ACRA at times through this last few years, which is adolescent community reinforcement approach, and it's a evidence-based substance use intervention and support.
I mean, did you say you're screening every student?
So, okay, so this one, so let's look at so we're screening every 7th grader.
Okay.
It's easy to make, yeah, it's easy to get like the middle schoolers to like fill it out.
Yeah.
And we're not screening people that opt out. You can opt out, parents can opt out. So in 2022-23, 224 kids at the high school filled out the GAD. And 123 out of 224 were moderate to severe. In 2023-24, 145 filled it out and 43 were severe. So it went from 55% in 2022-23 to 30%. And that's like consistent. I checked the YRBS data. That's like consistent, like kind of consistent with the YRBS data for that year. It was 41 to 32%. So it did show that our rates went down. I also just want to say that I mean, I'd be curious if people who are struggling are more likely to fill it out. So that's another thing. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the craft. So the craft asks, so the crafts ask 7, like, I'm not a lover of the craft, but it's the DPH, it's what they mandate all, it's like an unfunded mandate for all schools. This year we're doing the craft 2.1N, so it asks a lot more nicotine and vaping. So we're gonna get a lot more information than this. This is like 5 questions. And again, you could have had one night like incident and you could have said yes to everything. So you really have to do the follow-up, which is called the SBIRT, which is, it's like a screening, it's like motivational interviewing. You see kind of like what, you know, if they're wanting to make any changes, cut down.
You do that with folks who are going to be significant.
Yeah, only clinically significant.
And you see that the numbers went down.
Went down. And that also is very consistent with our YRBS data. The next one we could talk about.
That is good news, right?
That's great news.
Okay, highlights that.
Okay, so this is this is looking at what were the screening outcomes. So like I said, there was different things that they were offered, increased adjustment counseling support, increased guidance support, in-school supports, which is our contracted services with outside providers, continued in-school supports, and out-of-school referrals. And so that was, why am I able to? Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, it just seems like in the 2020, the first year we connected people more. So
But also,
there was more need. Yeah, there was more need. Yeah. Okay, the next. This is O'Malley. Oops, O'Malley. They went down as well from 54% to 24%. So, but they also did in 2022, we did just the 7th graders. In 2023-24, we did the whole school, 485 people filled it out. And this year we're only doing 7th, where they're down help. I mean, like we need to be able to respond. But
are they doing this in health class?
No, they're doing this in advisory.
But does every kid have advisory?
Yeah.
That's not the thing that they miss if they're in course and band. I
don't know.
They do.
Oh,
You think they miss advisory? I think, yeah, kids who are. Not every. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is the craft, and in 2022-23, 145 kids filled it out. About 5% were flagged as concerning. The next year, 15% were flagged as concerning. That concerned me.
No, but also,
Yeah.
and that jives well with your anecdotal evidence.
With what?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, in terms of what adjustment counselors and the administrators and people are.
Do you have a reason for that? I know it's late, but do we know why?
No.
Okay.
I think this year with the more extensive vaping and nicotine questions, we'll get more information. And and maybe a focus group. Yeah, to get more, a little more. Okay, so the next one is the behavioral health dashboard. That is, I'm not going to go through all this, but these are incidences that we could that we track. Yeah. I went through this with you all before, so I won't do it again. But if we perform a threat assessment, if we file a 51A, if a student is hospitalized, if someone is screened for a psychiatric reason, that's all things that are locked. I am working with SSRE, which is Social Science Research Evaluators, and we are working to make sure it's more consistently implemented. So that's what I'm working on. All right, and then
Wait.
Go ahead. I just cruised.
Okay.
I think we'll pass them.
Okay. This is 3. This is developing the skills and expertise in school-based clinical staff and educators. All the approaches in this really look at lagging skills and developing these skills through emotional regulation, distress tolerance, mindfulness, and promotion of problem-solving and decision-making skills. So Lynn Lyons was, am I going to ask you? Lynn Lyons definitely changed the way we approach how we support struggling kids. You know, in 504s in the past, we used to write like, you know, students anxious, they don't need to present. That wasn't exactly how we wrote it. But now we look at what do they need to do? What are the skills they need to develop incrementally to have that ability? We don't just avoid things, we like teach kids how to tolerate distress. We don't seek to eliminate anxiety because that's not life. We try to get them to have a different relationship with it. So we've worked with parents. I have consult tomorrow morning at 9 with a parent who's, you know, we have once a month with parents, providers, and the student family. So they're all working in a shared way for students. I'm going to say though, the Lynn Lyons has been a game changer for us, but it doesn't translate well into helping teachers. So that's where collaborative problem solving, looking at lagging skills, they think of it as lagging thinking skills, inflexible thinking, like there's a lot of different areas. But, and also the DBT work that we're doing with McLean's is kind of complementing it really well. Because we can look at lagging skills, we could look at how we develop those skills, and I won't go through all of that, but that's why we have a partnership with McLean's school consultation through Lily Lutz Foundation. And we had all district clinical staff trained for 3 full days, and they do twice a month consultations with us. It's really intensive and it's been really good. Collaborative problem solving, we're still working with Think Kids, and Larry Lamb is working with our district team. And a lot of times we'll engage them too to consult on difficult cases. Okay, next. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, this is a level of support and skill development of our clinical staff that's pretty rare in school districts. Okay, and also the whole shift in terms of helping our staff, you know, build skills with students And that, as Amy's described, is also, it's a huge fundamental shift. And it'll help our students, long-term, this level of support on really important approaches for those out. And then also the level of consulting with these experts over time, rather than a one-shot deal. This is now for multiple years, both in lines and them. It's just, and part of the question we get on side of problem solving, for example, is how do we have more people engaged with that approach? That's something that a classroom teacher, professionals can all learn about too. But anyway, I just want to pause there to acknowledge like this is really significant work that is helping our staff.
Right, and so this is something, behavioral health protocol manual. There's different areas, but it's what I've been working on to have a hub where any staff can get what is our protocol for the district? Yeah, what is our protocol? It's a centralized location for forms, referral forms, consent forms, release of information forms, threat assessment forms, re-entry procedures. So this is an example of one, and I just gave you this because you're familiar with this. It's Handle with Care. So if you can go to the next one.
Yes.
Okay, so this is just part of it. There's like 2 more pages of this, but we just did a screenshot. This is like what it looks like. And you can link on any of these things. You can't right now because it's a screenshot, but this is like 51A, what are the protocols? Sexual abuse disclosure, what are the protocols? Suicide assessment. So all these things are in one centralized place, and we have staff, new staff that can refer to it, old staff, any staff. And this is the Handle with Care. It just shows you kind of the kind of depth of each one. So it will highlight the purpose, definitions of helpful terms. And then this specific one says procedures, like how you will be notified. And then it's got the steps. How do you handle what to do with the Handle with Care notification, and what to do following a Handle with Care notification. Then every single protocol that's on there has like additional resources. Sometimes there's a sheet on trauma response. Sometimes it's a video. So just anything that might help someone get more information, more training in this specific area. So that's been a lot of work, but it's still a work in progress. Yeah. Okay, this is almost done. So the 4th is leveraging community partnerships, and I just want to highlight. So basically, I already said this. Like, we need to leverage these things, and we have a lot of grants where we leverage them in a lot of ways. I'm just going to highlight 2 today. We'll go to the next one. Raise and Project Adventure. Yeah, I don't need to go through the text. So RAISE is our dropout prevention program. I created it right when I took this job. Unity has welcomed us with no cost into their space downtown. This is the data. It speaks for itself. The first year, 16 students attended, 5 graduated, 5 returned to GHS, 3 returned to RAISE, and 1 withdrew. It's about that the whole way through. Our goal isn't for them to stay there necessarily and graduate. It's to keep them engaged in whatever school, whether it's coming back here, whether it's going to the Gap, whether it's, whatever it is. So right now there's 12 students, there'll be more because now's the time they're going to be more like referrals. Judy Bloomfield is like our program coordinator there. She is amazing at just relentless, really. She's calling them and engaging and outreach, and Shayna Doberman, the program coordinator, I want to shout out to her, and her staff is amazing at Unity. Go ahead.
Didn't we lose, because this was so successful, didn't we lose the grant?
So it was originally granted by DESE, the division like DPR, which is, I forget what that stands for. And then our rates got so much better that we were no longer eligible. So I am paying through a DESE grant and then a special ed tutoring. Mike probably doesn't. No, Judy. What did you say? Judy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the data on that. And it's just showing, this is just highlighting our partnerships and the need for them. Project Adventure, this is another thing, and I'm gonna shout out to Gary because he helped with the licensing. But elementary school, we have the 5th grade challenge course for the transition. All the 5th graders go. Middle school uses the challenge course in PE. We have about 6 people trained. Danny O'Connor is like the lead. Officer Sutera and Mark Mastandria are also, and there's others. But they use it, I was told, 3 times a week. It's being very utilized, and that's exciting. The high school has used Project Adventure for adventure-based counseling groups in the Anchor program, in our therapy program, for, this is the 4th year. And this year it's being paid by the Tower Foundation and class I paid through DESE. And it's really effective with that. They love it. Okay, next. And this is so I knew I was doing this presentation. I made someone run down and take pictures. So they were doing it. It was like just a typical day. And this is the cargo net. And and then we're gonna work with them to develop the core SEL competencies. So there's a little bit more framework around it, but it's great. And we just got inspected. We got certified, and the people got technically trained, refreshers.
So, I just know I noticed a collaboration here. I noticed physical activity, and I see smiles. That's like pretty good.
Very good. They love it. And then just a couple things to come. I'm trying to, well, Ben kind of makes me like just not do as much and like deepen the work, which I appreciate. So, however,
however, you are who you are.
However, I didn't listen, and I since the summer I've been working with Walker.
Recorded, right?
Yeah, Walker in Boston and Cape NY to develop this wellness coaching program and field practice in place. And this is gonna, I believe this is gonna be a model program where, and Rosa Goulart is gonna be the teacher. And we're working with the Walker program for the curriculum. And what it's gonna be is gonna be half a year of upperclassmen who learn their own lived experience, cultural lens, helping skills, guest speakers. Like, it's really a exposure to the helping field, because at this point we have AP Psych, which is great that we have AP Psych, but that's this will be more experiential, and they will get a chance to be placed in a field practicum in our after school programs, in the Y programs. We're trying to also get them a free Y membership. They told me that on the call. So we just had a very promising, we had submitted a letter of interest, and it looks like they're inviting us. And once they invite you to, it's pretty, they said it's a pretty good chance you're going to be funded. So it's a 3-year, $150,000 grant. And we hope to, it's already in the program of studies, so it's going to happen. But that's really exciting. And they're going to be being supervised every week, like a field practicum. And if they do the field practicum, they will get AP credits. Okay. And then we're expanding our restorative practices. I didn't even talk about restorative practices in here really, but we've already trained 21 people in community circles through Suffolk Restorative Center for Restorative Practices. We're doing in May 28th and 29th, we're doing another 20 people throughout the district. We just trained 21 students at Gloucester High School for a peer mediation program through the North Shore Resolution Center, through Anya McDavid, and John Saroof came, and a retired superintendent. It was really great, and we had a second training. So those are some things. I'm sure you've heard of DESE's Alternatives to Discipline. there's areas that there's like 4 areas they want you to develop, which is collaborative problem solving, conflict resolution, and peer mediation. 3 of them, and there's 1 more. No, because that's the umbrella. But yeah, so it's good. So we're doing that, and we just are gonna have like 3 advisors for that program. And that's all, all this is grant funded. Am I done? Yeah, that's the last slide.
I just want to say, like, I'm sorry that it got so late and that you had to rush.
Don't worry.
But the work you do is so extraordinary and so important that it's, I mean, I feel like we did you a disservice by having rushed through it, but it's just, thank you. Like, what incredible, extraordinary work. And despite what Ben says, like, I know you bring, I'm just kidding. I know how much passion you bring and how much you are just like out there with both macro and micro, right? Both the programs and creating the capacity, and then each student. And it's really, I mean, you're a gift to this district, and I think.
Thank you. Second that. 30. Outstanding.
Just a quick comment, if I might, a couple of things. One about my only concern, one of the things that I met with some teachers recently, and one of the things that I've expressed from my own point of view is, hey, what about the parents? Where's the parent? And sometimes it's not possible to involve parents with kids that are struggling with issues, but is there any point where, so we set up these kids with in-house services, out-of-house services. Where do the parents get involved in the whole? Is there a connection between the school and the parents, I guess is what I'm asking.
So I would say that for the work that we're doing with the clinical staff, with Larry Lamb and with Lynn, we do engage the parents on those calls. Like tomorrow is one that there was like an acute episode and really having a hard time coming to school. It came out of like nowhere, and the parents are coming. Usually we also include the therapist, so we're all using a similar approach. Larry too has come on with parents. I also engage other people. I have Riverside Trauma. Larry Berkowitz has been on like CNN. I have people that I trust, and I pull them in when we need to. And we do also do the family speaker series, which I think, as you saw, it probably needs to be embedded into something like an athlete, where we get parents, because oftentimes we don't get parents to attend sometimes, because people are busy.
Yeah.
But if you have any other ideas, I would love to hear.
No, and the only other thing I'd say is that for me, speaking from just adverse childhood experience that I suffered with, my world didn't turn around until there was a pivot where a teacher one day said to me, he didn't say, what's wrong with you? He said, what happened to you? And I said, oh, that's a different take. It went from, what's wrong with you again today, Malcolm, to, what happened to you? And that so it really started there with the teacher, and that sometimes we understand the forms and the mechanics of it, but it started with a very personal, what happened?
Yeah, that's so important. And I think, the trauma-informed approaches are training that we do for staff. I think I also was going to say that we also, for the more complex students, we're doing a lot more provider meetings where we do pull in the parents and the providers again, so we're clear on who's doing what and how we can reinforce. They've learned from us, we learn from them. But yeah, I think the parent piece is.
I want to add to that, in addition to the thing you talked about in terms of like some of the folks supporting our staff and engaging parents, there's also, there's so many times where staff members, clinical staff members, yourself, Mike as well, and others, our kids are having some of those serious difficulties. Like that's right in there with parents.
Yeah.
And in terms of our staff supporting them, meeting with them, being there with them, pulling them in. So there's also that sort of one-on-one engaging with parents, especially in our with our students who are need the most support. So there's a sort of a formal system and structures of engaging parents, but there's also then one-to-ones that there's a lot to.
I wanted to add one more thing that I'm thinking is also because of the consults that I do with the whole district clinical staff, a lot of times we talk about shared families. And so then we'll invite the families in with all of, like with the different schools, so that we're all supporting and they're not getting pulled into 3 different schools. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of work. I think the more I initially thought of the more formal things like presentations or this, but there's a lot of everyday work.
To just dovetail, my last thing to dovetail onto what Laura said, I'm almost sorry they had to give the presentation really quick because I think it's that important. And the only other thing that I would say is I like one of the things that I learned is that I became kind of resilient, through some difficult stuff. I became a lot more resilient and a lot more gritty by the time I was a little bit older. I think that there's some payoff to that. I don't think it wasn't always a safety net there. There wasn't always something to say. We got you. Like you had to kind of grit it out a little bit. And I think I'm not saying that's for every kid, but I'm saying that can be beneficial. That's my
As far as like services in-house and in district services, is it correct to call it mental health services?
What you mean?
So if there's an intervention, if there's a discipline issue, or if there's a mental health issue, are we servicing kids with mental health support? Is that how this?
So do you mean in response to the universal screenings?
Yeah, things like that, and just in general, like let me get to my main question really quick because I know it's late. At what point are we required to inform the parents that they're receiving any kind of mental health services?
So we always, whenever we just like if a student is not receiving IEP services.
Yeah.
Right, like if they're not on IEP, the parents are aware that kids on IEPs are receiving the service. If they are not under that umbrella, then we inform parents and get consent.
Okay, yeah, so there is informed consent to the parents. Right?
But just to understand, like a fair number of the support we provide is related to IEP services.
Yeah.
Required.
Yeah. Right, but not every student's going to fall under that.
No, right. I'm saying a large number are already,
Yeah.
That's why they provide as part of the IEP. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you for bearing with us tonight.
No, I would mistake.
Thank you. So much to do.
Andrea, thank you for hanging in there too.
Yes.
So if Andrea is here in order so we can approve the preschool tuition rates.
Oh, wow.
No, you've not done that at not the wasn't on last month's agenda.
I gave a report on it and we approved it immediately. We did.
It came up right after her report.
It was one of those things where we recommended it and approved it.
It's done.
We did it.
That's on me, Andrea. I'm really sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, you big time.
I thought we changed the way.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
I
thought that's what happened.
Sorry, we're sorry.
That was done the night we discussed it at B&I.
Yeah. It was done that later at school committee?
Later at school committee.
Same night, we're sorry, we're all sorry.
I'm sorry. That's great.
It's been great. I'm actually very happy that I got to hear Amy's presentation, so.
Thank you.
It's totally on me. It's absolutely on me. I'm very sorry.
All good.
All right, take care. Yeah, we can go.
Okay, we have,
We have
I'm not reporting, I don't report the budget, you already did it.
yeah, just a few topics.
Good job.
So the BNF met on March 19th. The first topic was electric buses. What? Yeah. So we did a snapshot and look at the net costs. Moving to electric buses would cost $570,000 for 6 buses with an annual cost of $42,000 each after taking into consideration the cost of the buses, the charges, grant money that's available. Long story short, the city has agreed to buy the preschool, as you know, which I can put on a little bit later.
No, they're working on it.
They're working on it. They're agreeing to attempt to purchase the building. So knowing the cost of the electric buses, we don't feel like this is the right time to proceed with electric buses. Just a quick snapshots, but electric buses cost $360,000 each. And the cost for electricity is about $57,000 a year versus $20,000 for, you know. So overall, it's very costly.
Say that part again, there's how much cost to charge buses?
So it's around $57,000 per year versus about $20,000 for diesel.
Yeah.
So the cost of the bus is it's expensive.
Yeah.
To be environmentally friendly, it's expensive. So they are in conjunction with the city, they've decided not to proceed with electric buses at this time. Who's in they?
City
and schools together.
It's a recommendation to use it when you're pursuing.
Yep. So the next topic was the GTA reimbursement of tuition. As you know, Article 23 of the GTA contract allows teachers to be reimbursed for their first class. It's a pot of $50,000 for the teachers plus an extra $10,000 for special ed tuition reimbursement. And there is a 3-step process to getting reimbursed. The first is the approval, I believe through Amy's office. The second is to show the transcripts with the grades, and then the third step is proof of payment. And the receipt from payment. Yeah, proof of payment that they received it. So as you know, we got a complaint and got a report on it. Long story short, there are, I believe it was 30 teachers applied. Sorry, I'm trying to go through my notes real quick. Regardless of how many it was, the issue is that we do not have a date to turn in the documents to process the reimbursement. And know that the classes are taken prior to July 1st of 1 year and then paid out in the next year. So here we are in March, and the classes that were taken in up through July of last year, the district did not receive all the documentations from the teachers to get reimbursed. The district likes to put all the reimbursements together in one warrant to the city so that the district has an understanding of how much is left in that $50,000 pot, because there's an option to get paid for a second class if there's money left over. So after discussion, we made a motion to recommend to the full committee that we allow Superintendent Lemus and administration to meet with the GTA and come up with a side letter of agreement to come up with a date for submission of all the documents to be processed by a certain time so that they can get to the city in a faster capacity. So there was nothing holding the payment up other than the district receiving the information from the teachers. From all the teachers that applied. Okay. And just know that on Tuesday, I signed a warrant and most teachers are gonna get reimbursed within the next couple of weeks out of that warrant. There's still a few stragglers, but they decided not to hold it up any longer.
They were stragglers because they hadn't submitted.
They haven't submitted the required documentation. Administration is working very well. We're doing a lot of outreach and making it a very simple process. I believe you even have a computer system. What was it, Frontline, that they can submit the information through. So there is no barriers other than just getting all the submissions in on time to be paid out. So going forward, hopefully we'll do those negotiations. We'll come up with a date and it will be a clean cut system. Cody Marshall likes everything clean. That's why he submits everything in one package. It's a best practice. It's done through districts. So, hopefully that issue shall be resolved, and I believe there'll be many happy teachers getting their reimbursements in the next couple of weeks. So, the subcommittee recommends to the full committee that the administration, the superintendent and administration meet with the GTA to discuss a side letter of agreement to have a date put in place for documents, approval and documents to be received to process reimbursement.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
As I said, we discussed the preschool, and there was a DNF meeting the other night, but it was reported by superintendent that the city is starting the conversation to purchase the preschool building, the administrative building.
Eminent domain. Eminent domain process, a friendly taking.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
A lot of that conversation is done in executive session on the city side, but you can follow it there, plus then will give us the updates. And
They're gonna have the next step for them is, well, I think they're having I'm not gonna get the name, one of the city's commissions look at the purchase. And then also then the city council will have a public hearing. That hearing won't be before April 8th. There was a potential for it to be scheduled in April 8th, but it won't be now. It'll be scheduled after that, just to give it time.
And then we discussed the budget, which we had a presentation on tonight, and did some budget transfers. There was one transfer for refrigerating cost that we allowed that to go forward, which was under the consent agenda. That's all I have to report.
And just quickly, O'Malley Middle School window replacement, which I wasn't able to give an update. I'm going to update now, which is basically we're in the sort of the final stages of it. Finally, they've done the last installation of the louvers, which is in the kitchen and the cafeteria. We are running into some problems, leaks in some places.
With the new windows?
No, really, where we believe there were punctures made during the work.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Punctures in the wall?
No, in the roof.
Oh, the roof.
The DPW is very involved in this. They're supporting us, working with the project manager, to make sure the project manager and the designer get the make sure that all the work is done properly by the contractor before substantial completion is declared. Okay. And then once this item's going to go forward, so we're having a meeting with them. Also, there needs to be a resolution around what they're calling change order 17, which is related to the additional work that had to be done. I've been informing you for the last year or two, and what the resolution on that might be. We are, yeah, so we'll take a meeting on that soon. We believe the MSBA is weighing in on that. May have adaptation from our owner's project manager.
Are you talking about when they initially did the windows and they had to be measured
Yes,
correctly?
yeah, and all the sort of the domino effect of that.
Yeah.
Issues, exactly.
And then, so this new issue with the leaks and the punctures in the roof, are we assuming this was from the construction of the contractors?
That's what we are supposing, yes. So I think we have good evidence for it, but that's something that we're continuing to get support on from the owner's project manager, the designers, to make sure that that's resolved. Everything is, installed and operational fully.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question about the potential purchase of the elementary administrative, preschool and administrative buildings. Any thoughts to like, refurbing it for our, better purposes and things like that?
So included in the loan order. So, sure, I will do that. I can show this next time. A couple things, just on the financials. If you, what Connor McCorkle, the city's chief financial officers, put together, shared with the city council, is that the financial benefit of purchasing it is that the city starts saving $20,000-$30,000 the first year, and then rapidly goes up to over $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. Okay, because lease payments would still go up, whereas mortgage payments go down over time. ultimately over 20-year purchase, mortgage essentially, saves over $2.5 million. Okay, so in the loan order that they ultimately will vote on, they'll have something, some additional dollars available to borrow, which will allow some improvements to be made. Some of the ones are on systems, so HVAC and roof, okay, to start. And also things such as the playground is a high priority, perhaps the resurfacing the parking lot. And then other maintenance such as replacing carpets or redoing flooring, painting, talking to Mike Hale, that can be done, over time. Those fixes don't require borrowing. They're not as capital intensive. So the simple answer is yes. Some of the details.
Yeah, and the recent concern with the para reductions and students needing help going to the bathrooms, like if I remember correctly, the bathrooms are in the hallway. In our elementary schools, they're in the classroom for the kindergartners. Some, well, West Parish, I guess.
The newest ones, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to make their lives any easier, maybe.
No, so we will not be adding bathrooms or that sort of thing in classrooms. It's not possible.
Okay.
So it's not a perfect building rationalization for preschool. It's good. It works quite well. But there are no other, until we perhaps build a new facility, there's no better facility we can find in the city.
You will give up your office.
Sorry?
You can give up your office this space.
I would if you have no space.
Okay.
Not giving up your office, changing your office. I can give my office. Yeah, does that help you? Yes, thank you.
Okay. Next item of business is action, we have grants. I move that we accept the Gloucester Education Foundation Beeman Theater Grant in the amount of $1,500 and the Gloucester Education Foundation District-wide Music Working Group Grant in the amount of $5,103.95. Second. Okay, discussion.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're tabling the letter because we're working on some edits to that, and we are going into executive session, and we've only come out to adjourn. So we are entering. I move that we go to executive session pursuant to executive session purpose 2 of MDL 30A, Section 21A, to discuss strategy and/or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And purpose 3 of MGL 30A, Section 21A, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with Gloucester Clerical Unit A, Union Supervisors Association, and the Massachusetts Nurses Association.
Second.
Yeah,
Chair Clancy.
yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mr. Linnell.
Yes.
Mr. McKee.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.